Hey listeners, tonight we begin with a man whose idea of divine genius involved public orgies and making senators watch, followed by the Renaissance's most strategic horniness, and finishing up with the surprisingly high status of a medieval dog. This is the history so ridiculously specific, you might actually be able to fall asleep before we get to the part about King Charles II's spaniels. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world to absorb this slightly chaotic history. Now, dim those lights. Let the hum of your fan turn into the muffled roar of the Roman Forum. Get cozy under your blanket and take a deep breath. We're about to drop into the lives of people who had very few of your modern comforts and significantly more chances of being executed for smiling at the wrong time. Have you ever wondered what Roman servitude under a chaotic god-emperor actually felt like? Was it like being constantly audited by a celebrity psychopath? Did the Medici really use romantic affairs as a corporate ladder? And how in the world did a little lapdog get better food and a better bed than most medieval peasants? Let's find out. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 37 AD, right when Emperor Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus, better known as Caligula, is deciding that the worst thing that can happen in Rome isn't being invisible, it's being noticed. Chapter 1. Welcome to Palatine Hill. The Marble Anxiety. Hey guys, welcome back to your cozy little corner of mildly interesting history, where the stories might be as wild as your last online shopping experience, but far less likely to end in buyer's remorse. Tonight, we're diving into a realm more bewildering than the last time you tried to assemble IKEA furniture without a Swedish instruction manual. Imagine yourself in the marble-edged opulence of Caligula's palace, where the decor is so extravagant it makes even your that's-so-extra friend look like a minimalist. Before we embark on this marble-clad adventure, why not do the adult version of setting your bedtime? So dim the lights, crank up your fan, and wiggle into a position that makes you feel less like a pretzel and more like the comfy burrito you aspire to be. And while you're settling in, let me ask you a few mildly concerning questions. Ever found yourself wondering what it would be like to serve a ruler who treats his decisions with all the commitment of a cat, choosing which nap to take? Or perhaps, do the endless demands of a monarch make you yearn for a quiet evening of scrolling through cat memes instead? Can you even fathom what it would be like to weigh servitude against the backdrop of gold-encrusted ceilings and an atmosphere heavier than your mother-in-law's judgment? Congratulations! You've just woken up in the year 37 CE, an era where glittering marble halls come paired with a hefty serving of anxiety and a side of, am I about to get thrown to the lions for this outfit? Welcome to Caligula's palace, where serving a mad emperor might just make you miss your 9-to-5 desk job. And that's saying something. As you stretch your limbs in the pillowy embrace of opulence, the first thing you notice is the contrasting weight of your own anxiety versus the extravagant surroundings. The air here, It's a confused blend of perfumed anxiety and just the slightest hints of something dubious, like someone deep-fried a fish and then tried to cover it up with a bottle of lavender. Every inhale carries with it a sense of unspoken dread, a vague reminder that one misstep might leave you more disposable than last week's leftovers. Let's talk about those marble walls, shall we? Oh, they're beautiful, smooth like a well-oiled slide, glistening under the artificial glow of hundreds of oil lamps, each flicker reminding you that they could ignite a truly dramatic scene at any moment. You can practically hear the echoes of extravagant banquets where the laughter rolls like thunder, and at least half of it could be easily mistaken for the belly rumble of someone who should have just had a salad. Yet, amid the grandeur, there's a discomfort lurking, like that odd sock you find at the bottom of your drawer with no match. There's a reason the lavish halls of the palace feel more like a gilded cage than a fairy tale dream. Picture this. Between your duties, serving Caligula, the whims of nobility, and the occasional spectre of an unexpected assassination plot, sleep isn't exactly on the menu. Instead, you'll be surviving on a diet of jittery nerves and what-if scenarios. You glance over to the entrance of the hall, where you might just spot Caligula himself, a man more unpredictable than the Wi-Fi connection at your cousin's house when you need to stream something urgent. With hair styled higher than most modern skyscrapers, he's more reminiscent of a peacock than an emperor, strutting around, proudly oblivious to the eye rolls behind his back. The only things more elaborate than his wardrobe are the dinners he throws, complete with enough food to fill a Roman's wildest feast, and still manage to leave room for some awkward social maneuvering. Now, let's talk about what being a servant in Caligula's palace truly entails. Remember your high school lunchroom, when navigating friendships felt akin to tightrope walking at a circus? Imagine that, plus the risk of being shoved aside for misplacing a goblet filled with the finest wine. Caligula has a taste for the extravagant, and his needs change faster than the latest TikTok trend. If you think assisting an emperor requires unwavering loyalty and an ability to make judgment-free eye contact while he rambles about his latest harebrained schemes, boy, do I have a reality check for you. You might find yourself racing along the polished marble floors, dodging servants like a contestant on a culinary relay challenge, juggling muffins shaped like tiny golden chariots, and/or someone's extra-large goblet of wine. Ever spilled grape juice on a white sofa? Multiply that visual by every shade of anxiety and red-faced mortification as you try to keep a straight face through the absurdity of the situation. Moreover, let's not forget the palace's audibly masterpiece of awkward silence, layered with the dramatic echo of marble, where every miscommunication feels like a painful sonnet about your failures. When nobility arrives, it's all about perfect presentations and impeccable timing. Mixing up the appetizers could literally result in a delegation of groans loud enough to shatter fine china. And suddenly, you're thrust into the role of an unwitting tragic hero in an unending epic. And as the odors around you morph into a pungent fusion of sweat and lavender, a nagging thought creeps in. Do you really know who else might be mulling around, waiting to make a spectacle of you? Caligula's court is more dizzying than an amusement park ride with questionable safety regulations. Here, The only certainty is unpredictability and bedazzled chaos. A lethal mix best navigated with a strong sense of humor, and perhaps a slightly naive sense of hope. And just like that, you embrace the absurdity that is servitude in the palace. A theater of anxiety, where each day feels like an audition for a tragicomic play. You don't know how, but somehow, laughter often springs from these moments. They're less about the stony faces and more about surviving the madness just long enough to tell the tale, even if it means slipping on the floor with a vintage Roman fish dish in hand. Who knew serving an emperor could put you on a stage where every night feels like an open mic night for misfortune? Oh, the saga has just begun. Chapter 2. The Marble Maze of Anxiety. Ah, the corridors of Caligula's palace. Truly a sight to behold if your heart doesn't race at the thought of stepping on an emperor's toe and finding yourself a warm meal for the lions. You stand shoulder to shoulder with a steward who possesses the charm of a rattlesnake on a bad day. His smile is polite, though his eyes sparkle with a hint of mischief sharper than the weapons securing the guards at each corridor alcove. You'd think this is an elite establishment, but the steward, bless his heart, is more likely to guide you toward disaster, promising it's just around the corner. As you slink through the endless hallways, the guards line the walls like sentries at a monochrome fashion show. Their expressions so blank they could easily be mistaken for extras in a Roman drama gone horribly wrong. Their eyes are fixed straight ahead, but you can sense the effort required to avoid making direct eye contact. I mean, who wouldn't want to suppress a giggle at the absurdity of Caligula's wardrobe just behind them? It's as if someone wrapped a peacock in regret and sent it waddling down the runway. The air is thick, with not just marble dust, but also the cloying sweetness of perfumes mixed with desperate anxiety. Imagine a blend of Chanel No. 5 and the scent of panic as you try to navigate your fate in this ostentatious labyrinth, where the shadows seem to whisper secrets both juicy and scandalous. You might be able to taste that anxiety too, like that awkward moment when you realize you've texted your ex instead of your best friend. Except here, it could lead to an actual execution. Walking behind the steward, your sandals slap against the polished floor, sounding like a drum roll signaling your imminent doom. The walls of this place are adorned with gold leaf and marble that glisten like they're posing for a magazine photo shoot, fooling you into believing you're in a scene out of Roman dreams. But the reality is more akin to a comedy of errors. It's a precarious theater, and every slip could lead to a misshapen anecdote for future generations. See that door? The steward remarks, pointing to an ornate entrance so grand it would make the Louvre look like a roadside stand. That's where Caligula likes to unwind after a day of, well, whatever makes him less unpredictable. The last poor soul who oversaw his fun's suggestions found himself on an exotic vacation in far-off waters, specifically in the belly of a very hungry fish. You use your trusty imagination to conjure the chaos that likely rolls out behind that door. You think he insists on live entertainment that's so ridiculous it could make a reality TV show look cultured? Probably. It's like an evening of Dancing with the Stars, where every contestant has a death wish and a flair for the absurd. The whole idea sounds like a mix between a birthday party and a political coup. Everyone laughing, while secretly worrying they were about to be handed a death sentence in the form of a party game. As you nod along, trying not to appear as terrified as you feel, it strikes you that the room could also house some kind of bizarre marble animal petting zoo. Maybe a lion that services as Caligula's couch, ensuring that guests know relaxing can lead you to a cozy end. If you place a wager to see who's brave enough to pet the beast, prepare to call in your life insurance beforehand. It's like placing bets on the miserable timing of your aunt's divorce announcement at Thanksgiving dinner. Now the steward, ever so cheerful, continues guiding you down the corridor, his voice eerily calm, as if reciting a poorly constructed bedtime story. And over here we have the room where Caligula composes his poetry. He gestures grandly. Unsurprisingly, it's all about lions, opulence, and heartache, in ways only an unstable emperor could think to embroider. You can't help but chuckle. Poetry? The only screeching rhyme you can imagine rolling out of that room is something reminiscent of an angsty teenager's diary, with verses lamenting over misunderstood emperorship and a strong hankering for a simple sandwich. Something tells you that half the rhymes are solely to distract from his questionable judgment on the timing of breakfast. You soon arrive at a set of doors, each carved with illustrations that might as well depict the gradual descent into madness. Another round of polite venom from the steward. Just step inside, and remember, misinterpreting Caligula can also mean you'll be golden. His too kind eye has been known to spare only the absurd. With a deep breath, you muster your courage and step through the doors, instantly regretting the second of hesitation. It's like plunging into the ocean, only to discover it's filled with sharks and irrational ambitions. As the echoes of laughter and conversation envelop you, the realization sinks in. In this place, no moment is guaranteed, but every instance promises a story worth telling. There's tragic comedy in the air here, wrapped under a heavy drape of flamboyance. If this day doesn't end with you on stage recounting your escapades among the statues, drowning in laughter, will it count as a day well spent? Just as the chaos sinks in, you think you may want to find the nearest exit, only to remember, in a palace like this, that's akin to booking a one-way ticket on the route of regret. Buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. Chapter 3. Entering the thunderous storm of Caligula. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of mildly interesting history for sleep. Tonight, we dive deeper into origins more perplexing than your last attempt at assembling IKEA furniture. The reign of Caligula, the emperor who ruled like a toddler with a magnifying glass over ants. Get ready, because just when you thought your boss was demanding, wait until you meet Caligula, the CEO of chaos, draped in purple and surrounded by attendants who can't quite decide if they're bowing in reverence or just trying to avoid an unfortunate excursion into the lion pit. But before we plunge into the absurdity of Roman palace life, let's take a moment. Dim the lights. Set that fan to a perfect, gentle breeze, and snuggle into that bed like it's your long-lost friend who finally returned after a highway detour. Seriously, is there anything as comforting as knowing the only thing you'll be wrestling with tonight is moderate discomfort of sleeping alone? Now, as you nestle in, ponder these questions. Have you ever felt like every meeting at work could potentially end with someone being flung into a pool of snapping crocodiles? Or how about showing up to a family dinner and realizing dinner isn't the only thing going to be roasted? And what about those puzzling moments when you accompany your friend to the grocery store and leave with only a single nutty snack, only to realize you're basically at the mercy of a whole aisle of temptation? Imagine mixing those scenarios with Caligula's daily life. Congratulations. You've just woken up in 37 AD, the very heart of the Roman Empire. The sun is gleaming. Your toga is a tad snug. And, oh wait, there's Caligula himself, strutting into the hall like the villain of a silent movie, where every eyebrow raise signals impending doom. You're not merely an outsider watching the spectacle. Nope. You've somehow wormed your way into servitude in this chaos-breeding extravaganza. The scene unfolds before you, a cacophony of color, sound, and perhaps just a hint of sheer terror. Caligula bursts into view, draped in his imperial purple, a color reserved exclusively for royalty. Much like that scandalously overpriced avocado toast in hip cafes. His face, a jigsaw puzzle of amusement and irritation, is framed by wild hair that looks as if it was styled by a tornado on an espresso binge. Each step he takes is marked with the reverberating echoes of attendants who bow their heads in perfect synchrony, creating a visual symphony reminiscent of poorly coordinated dancers at a wedding reception. Also, Jaw's head bowing, you realize this isn't just a greeting. Oh no, this is calibration for their survival. Each bow is less about respect and more a preventive strategy against Caligula's infamous mood swings. Think of it as navigating a busy highway filled with erratic lane changes. One misstep could land you right on the fast track to lost in the lion's den territory. Imagine the scent that fills the air. Not just the cloying perfume of cheap oils mingling with anxiety, but there's something else. A whiff of calamity that just screams something is about to go awry. Is it dinner? Is it a new game of who can make Caligula laugh before he issues a death sentence? You'll have to find out. As you make your way down the opulent marble corridors, which look as if they'd seen more drama than a reality show reunion, you overhear snippets of conversations. Is he wearing leopard skin today? Did you hear he wants to invite his favorite horse to dinner? Yes, you heard that right. Caligula had a thing for his horse, as if it were a contestant on America's Next Top Model, and not a foot-long bundle of trotting mane and attitude. With every bow and sidestep, you maneuver through this theatrical labyrinth, where the decor mixes elegance with unbridled absurdity. It's like if Tim Burton decorated a candy store in ancient Rome. Suddenly, you can't help but wonder what constitutes normal in a palace where the emperor could decide mid-meal to challenge the entire Senate to a dance-off on the marble floor. Losers to be promptly fed to the very crocodiles you just imagined in your daydream as an escape route. Then, bursting through your thoughts like a poorly executed comedy skit, Caligula points and gleefully declares, "Today we feast!" And what do you suppose is on the menu? This is no ordinary meal. It's a garden party where the vegetables could easily outlive the attendees. Enter the gaudy aesthetic of peacock brains and roasted parrot limbs, with congealed mystery sauces that likely would have provoked an immediate Yelp review from even the most adventurous foodies. And just as your stomach settles into a knot tighter than your grandmother's quilt, Caligula's mood takes a whimsical turn, and he decides that instead of regular entertainment, he wants guests to juggle raw fish while reciting poetry about their innermost regrets as the sun sets. You may find yourself wondering if there's an HR department to turn to for support. Spoiler alert, there isn't. Not in Caligula's court. It's more like active participation in the world's strangest performance art. And yet, amid the chaos, a chuckle escapes your lips. Because in a world ruled by whimsy and audacity, every moment could lead to comic relief or a quick exit from the stage of life. You're in for one adventurous ride, my friend. And as the absurdity unfolds, just remember, in this palace, it's not about the crown on Caligula's head, but about your head staying safely attached to your torso. So embrace the madness. Keep those jokes locked and loaded, and let the whirlwind begin.
Chapter 4. A Night in Caligula's Opulent Anxieties. Ah, the sweet solace of a fresh morning in the sprawling palace of Caligula, where the sheets beneath you are softer than your dreams of grand tranquility. But hold on, just a moment. Those aren't just any sheets. They're finely woven linen, luxurious enough to leave you wondering if you're more important than the emperor's latest whims. The room sparkles with opulence, although that might be just the reflection of the sun bouncing off the armor of the guards, who are, let's be real, likely more on edge than a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. With laughter ringing through the high-arched ceilings and music filtering up from below like an insistent all-day brunch invitation, you can barely grasp the notion that this palace also indulges in the art of existential dread. Yes, luxury doesn't come without its share of anxiety, just like a fancy espresso machine that you're terrified to use for fear of it exploding in an overly caffeinated chaos all over your new textured wallpaper. As you lie there, plush pillows cushioning any whisper of worry, you might ask yourself, have you ever found yourself at a gathering where everyone's chuckling, yet you're still bracing for tragedy? Or maybe your heart skips at the thought of socializing, much like stumbling upon your in-laws during the finale of a season's worth of binge-watching, a spectre of awkwardness looming over you. The palace isn't much different. Social dynamics can flip at a moment's notice, and you've stumbled into servitude in this chaotic court, which is somehow more stressful than the last time you tried to explain your career to your relatives during Thanksgiving. Before you drift off, take a deep breath and recognize that you've just woken up in the Roman Empire circa 37 AD, an era where time flies as swiftly as an ill-fated joke at a family party. You might casually wonder if the opulence you're surrounded by has sent your home insurance rates skyrocketing, given your position among Caligula's crew of attendants. Spoiler alert, there's no HR department here, just an emperor with more whims than a toddler denied their snack. The gentle rustle of heavy curtains floats into your ears, a harmonious melody perfectly in tune with the palace's blend of grandeur and absurdity. It seems today might just be the day when you're summoned to cater to Caligula's most whims.
napkin folds so intricate they could be confused for a paper origami display, or maybe the delicate task of feeding his favorite horse. Yes, you heard me right. His prized companion Incitatus, always dressed to the nines, and possibly sporting better bling than you. You shake your head, adjusting your position on the ridiculously plush bed that's softer than a buttercream frosting cake. Have you ever considered that surpassing your sleep quota might involve the constant threat of a horse becoming your direct superior? If you think office politics are intense, imagine realizing your new colleagues are literally hoofed creatures, flaunting their opulence with wildly embellished saddles, while you valiantly hold on to your dignity by keeping a safe distance. Let's now imagine the scene just outside your door. The corridors are bustling. Perhaps the servants are rehearsing for a grand feast that feels more like a game show than a dinner. Who will drop the fish this time is not just an idle thought. It's a hazard of palace life, with staff juggling fish like a top-tier circus act, while trying to recite poetry that completely defeats the notion of rhythm and rhyme. You can almost hear them fretting. Will Caligula find this entertaining, or will we find ourselves with unsolicited swimming partners? And, dear listener, let's not forget the ambience. The air carries the scent of precious oils mixed with a hint of impending doom, like a recently baked cake that you just know has something unsettling baked inside it. The laughter that wafts through the air dances through the opulent surroundings. Another reminder of how joy and terror coexist like hungry dragons and happily flapping fairies, each eagerly waiting to see who'll take the fall first. Suddenly, an echoing voice interrupts your musings. "Today we feast," Caligula declares enthusiastically. The banquet table, lavishly adorned, sprawling across the hall like a scene from a particularly overzealous buffet advertisement, offers foods you didn't even know could coexist on a plate. Roasted peacock with pilaf and a side of procrastination, you muse silently, imagining the vegetables being therapy for what's now a wild-eyed kitchen crew, preparing for whatever whimsical meals will amuse the emperor's taste buds. The staff scurries about, repositioning delicacies that are highly questionable at best. Is that a confection made of figs and stale rumors? Or perhaps a treasure trove of pastries, utterly concocted from grapevine gossip? Root choices are limited. Engage in playful cuisine philosophy, or take your chances in a gamble that will end with a trip to the waiting lions. But you chuckle softly to yourself because, let's face it, any event that requires you to juggle raw fish while contemplating deep existential reflections is assuredly a royal affair, far more entertaining than running late for your dentist appointment. As the absurdity continues to swell around you and the laughter becomes contagious, remember this. In the palace of Caligula, life's paradox lies not in the grandeur of the setting, but rather in the thrilling anticipation of just how close you'll get to becoming the evening entertainment.
Chapter 5. Moonlit Whims with Caligula.
Hey guys, welcome back to another night of history that's more entertaining than listening to Aunt Edna recount her bingo victories for the 5th time this week. Tonight, we're diving into something as absurdly exquisite as a platter of roasted peacock pie. Life under the whims of one particularly flamboyant Roman emperor, Caligula. Imagine a night so wild and wine-drenched that it makes your last Zoom happy hour seem like a tea party with the Queen. So, Grab your favorite cozy blanket, dim the lights, and remind your brain that it's on a journey tonight. Because really, has anyone ever thought, wow, I wish I could personally serve a guy who once appointed his horse to the Senate? Well, you're in luck. Picture this. You're serving in Caligula's palace, surrounded by food, questionable decor, and an emperor who thinks talking to the moon is a regular Tuesday night affair. Ever wondered what life is like when your boss has delusions of grandeur? Or recall that time your co-worker tried to convince everyone that a cat video was the pinnacle of art? Yeah, serving under Caligula is a tapestry of awkward social dynamics, comedic mishaps, and a hint of absolute madness. And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 37 AD, not a second too soon. If you ask the moon, which is probably anxiously awaiting its nightly chat with you. Let's set the scene, shall we? It's well past midnight, and the moon peeks through velvety curtains, casting a silver glow that's almost romantic. If only it didn't also illuminate the heap of roast boar with an odd amount of grape sauce. You, dear listener, find yourself half napping on the opulent couch, the fabric softer than the whispers of a childhood crush. But around you, the atmosphere is positively electric. Half-asleep attendants cling to their goblets, frantically trying to stay awake between sips of wine thinner than their grasp on sanity. Caligula lounges like a feline overlord on his throne, reclining amidst a veritable mountain of lavish platters that seem to be rebelling against the laws of gravity and common sense. "Did I ever tell you about the time the moon and I struck a deal?" he slurs, his eyes glimmering with whimsy as he toys with a fig like it's a precious gemstone. Providing the audience for this moonlit soliloquy is a bevy of attendants, wide-eyed and wobbly, each praying that, "Please don't make me serve dessert," is an acceptable silent prayer. It's as if Prometheus himself had tossed culinary caution to the winds, and the banquet tables groan under the weight of absurd delicacies. Roasted peacock, boiled ostrich eggs, and something that suspiciously resembles an overripe watermelon, but is supposedly exotic enough for a ruler's mid-snack revelry. How does one even eat a boiled ostrich egg? It's like navigating an emotional minefield while trying to stay calm. You're unsure whether to peel it or to enlist a diplomatic approach. And then, as Caligula continues his story about negotiating celestial real estate with the glowing orb of night, dare I say that life begins to parallel a badly scripted soap opera. This is a man who believes he's practically part of the divine. Half tempted to interject, you catch yourself imagining what an HR meeting would look like if someone ever raised their hand and asked, can we clarify the moon's role in team dynamics? Oh yes, the moon totally gets it, Caligula beams, knocking back another goblet. It doesn't judge. What do you think? The sun's rays are evaluating my power level? As he gestures dramatically, sending the small loaf of bread airborne, you can't help but think that Caligula's relationship with celestial bodies couldn't be better described than as a blend of teenage angst and complete detachment from reality. Sort of like that one uncle who insists on explaining his conspiracy theories after 3 too many glasses of Chardonnay. The attendees around you, eyes rolling back like marbles on holiday, fumble through awkward prayers. O moon, grant us unbroken silence between whims. Right? Like it could happen. The very thought of serving a man who considers a moonlit dialogue with his own ego to be a top-tier event sends you into fits of muffled laughter. You might try to lock eyes with a fellow attendant for a shared chuckle, only to discover they're already half asleep, their head occasionally bobbing like a duck caught in a daydream. You lean back, absorbing the ambiance, glittering with absurdity and the aroma of too much garlic. Did they really think that a pre-banquet discussion about cosmic friendships justified the scented candles scattered chaotically across the marble floors? It's as if Caligula armed each staff member with a strange genre of humor, something akin to a Roman reality show where the stakes are as high as your anxiety levels in a crowded dentist office. But isn't that the beauty of it all? In this remarkable topsy-turvy palace of Caligula, where the absurd collides with the divine, you've found your own peculiar niche. A life filled with the romanticism of history, wrapped in the pandemonium of emperor who hates boredom. A place where serving dinner could easily lead to existential musings about whose turn it is to speak to the moon next. And as your eyelids grow heavier, you can't help but chuckle softly at the notion that tomorrow's banquet might just feature a celestial symposium on who gets the final word during the grand feast, likely determined by a betting pool during which even the wine would prefer to opt out. Now, isn't that a plot twist worthy of a late-night drama? Chapter 6. Silent Survival Training under Caligula. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're navigating the rocky terrain of Servitude in Caligula's palace, where the only certainty is that the wine is either on the table or about to be spilled in a dramatic rapture. If you've ever thought, wow, I could really use a little silent survival training with a side of sociopathy, then you've tuned in to the right medieval experience. Before we dive deep into the awkward art of tiptoeing around a man who thinks he's a descendant of Jupiter, I'd like to ask, ever wondered how you'd manage avoiding the wrath of someone who could turn you into a statue with one flick of his wrist? Or how one maintains their sanity while practicing enthusiastic cheerfulness in a palace that resembles a circus without a safety net? Or even if smiling like you've just ingested biting lemon is truly a survival tactic? Tonight, we'll peel back the absurd layers of life as a servant in the grand, befuddling tapestry that is Caligula's court. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 37 AD, where everything is a rumor and reality is as slippery as a handful of unripe figs. Your day begins with a gentle nudge from Domina, your handler, and the surviving embodiment of, "You've got to be kidding me." Domina is, by all accounts, a seasoned expert who has served 3 emperors, which has to be a record for stress-induced white hairs. With a steely gaze, she is the self-appointed guru of nonverbal communication, at least until someone else steals the title, probably another servant trying to dodge the emperor's latest whim. Rule number 1, walk like a shadow, she whispers, her voice as calm as a glassy lake at dawn. You can almost feel the pressure in the air shift as you attempt to embody the stealth of a cap burglar, though you secretly feel more like a confused duck waddling through a yoga class. Each footfall must be light enough to distract an assassin, but not so light that you might just float away. Imagine the scene. You're in the palace corridors, tiptoeing around lavish mosaics and the inevitable vine of grapes left to ferment beneath the gilded columns. The grape juice, at least, is less judgmental than Caligula, who at this very moment thinks the moon is challenging him to a staring contest. It's oddly more comforting than it should be. As you practice your silent gliding, there's a distinct sound in the air. Well, all the sounds, to be precise. A gregarious court jester is performing his latest dramatic monologue about being accidentally married to a goat. Or was it a very judgmental rock? The laughter echoes, but you must remain a ghost among the living, an unnoticeable whiff of invisibility while you navigate the whispers of madness. Remember, your expression is everything, Domina instructs, her eyes flicking to a group of nobles laughing about some indecipherable joke. Your cheese-eating grin has to beam brighter than Caligula's ego. You nod, attempting to muster your best smile, the kind that doesn't just say you're only mildly concerned about the simultaneous apocalypse unfolding around you. Your cheerful visage stretches increasingly thin as you shift to rule number 2, standing still. A noble passes, and you can practically hear the swoosh of silk as they saunter by, their arrogance palpable enough to make your teeth ache. The key, according to Domina, is to find a relaxed readiness, which sounds like something your therapist would advise instead of a palatial survival method. So there you are, channeling your inner statue, trying not to blink lest you shatter the illusion. Every muscle in your body is in a silent revolt as you focus on not questioning whether that lint on your tunic is actually alive. As you freeze in an impressively intricate, waiting to be ennobled pose, you can't help but wonder if Caligula would even notice if you spontaneously combusted into confetti. Perhaps he'd merely take it as a whimsical excuse to redecorate. The struggle is real. Last week, you almost lost your cheerfulness when a fellow servant, while practicing her imagined dialogue for the moon, tripped over an unsuspecting cat and flew spectacularly into a bowl of grape sauce. Caligula erupted in laughter. You can't help but feel deep compassion for the lady now known as Grape Girl. Next comes the pièce de résistance, practicing sincere cheerfulness, the century's leading survival tactic. Domina explains that this cheerful facade must be robust enough to handle Caligula's whims. Because have you met a sociopath who doesn't love a good laugh? You must blend jolliness with an undercurrent of sheer existential dread, as though you've just spotted a tiger in the distance and have convinced yourself it really prefers salad over herding you for dinner. Perhaps, if you're very lucky, you can create a smile so warm and inviting that it tricks Caligula into thinking you're the life of the party. Perhaps his new favorite among the servants. But as the evening wears on, and the moon flaunts its glory, you can't shake the tingling feeling that both your life and your attempts at cheerfulness might just be on par with being a human piñata at an overzealous birthday party. And so, you stand, tiptoe, smile, and hope the moon doesn't remind Caligula to order another banquet. Because, honestly, no one needs a midnight feast that puts the game of who's next to the ultimate test. For now, you've managed a day in the palace without losing your head. And frankly, That's something worth celebrating, or at least chuckling about at moonrise. So, dear listener, as you dim the lights and let your eyelids drift, know that behind it all lies a chaotic ballet of survival, silence, and simply trying to remain cheerful while the palace swings on the pendulum of absurdity. And trust me, they're definitely keeping the grape sauce on standby.
Chapter 7. A Banquet of Bedlam in Caligula's Court.
Hey guys, welcome back to the delightful yet peculiar arena of ancient Roman life, where the coffee may not kick in, but the drama definitely does. Tonight, we plunge headfirst into an event that makes your last family gathering feel as balanced as a yoga retreat. It's time to feast at the chaotic buffet that is Caligula's palace. Ever wondered what it would be like to sit through a meal where cheerfulness is mandatory, but survival is optional? Well, you've come to the right place. Before we dive into the glittering chaos of senators in embroidered togas and a mood heavier than Caligula's crown, let's take a moment. Picture yourself standing next to a table laden with platters that look like they're straight out of your most abstract dreams. Slices of exotic meats, fruits that look suspiciously like they were borrowed from a cartoon, and enough wine to create a small lake. Ask yourself, could you navigate this food-laden minefield while dodging the beady glare of the whimsically unpredictable emperor? Does the thought of being the only one not laughing at his latest bizarre quip send your heartbeat racing faster than a Roman chariot? And what about the inevitable foul play in jest, where someone accidentally loses a limb for misplacing a fork? Now, close your eyes and imagine this. Congratulations! You've just woken up nestled between the plush pillows of the Roman Empire in 37 A.D., mere moments before the grand banquet begins. The air is thick with the scent of incense and questionable fish. The atmosphere buzzes with laughter and the distant sound of wine sloshing about, a tune performed especially for those brave enough to serve at the court of the most infamous emperor of them all. It's dark. Your heart races, and you can hear the shuffling of senators like they're lined up for the most nerve-wracking game of charades. They're dressed in their finest togas, weightier than your greatest regrets from high school, each embroidered with enough gold thread to blind a cat. These men, who once commanded legions, now appear as nervous as first-time actors awaiting their cue in a farcical play. And here you are, the lowly servant, caught in a human game of Tetris while trying not to spill the precious wine, the only thing between you and calamity. As you stand there, your job is deceptively simple. Pour the wine without making eye contact. It's more of an art form, really, a silent ballet of avoidance and balance. Imagine trying to deliver lemonade to a group of toddlers at a birthday party, except these toddlers wield daggers and a recipe for chaos. You grasp the ornate pitcher, feeling the cool, smooth marble beneath your fingertips. The wine sloshes dangerously close to the rim, threatening to cascade onto your tunic, or worse, onto Caligula himself. And behold, the man of the hour makes his entrance. He glides in barefoot, like a toddler on a sugar high, making your heart skip a beat. You can't help but notice that he's donned a crown that looks like a confused Christmas ornament desperately clinging to 17th century fashion. His half smile, the sort you'd see in a horror film, sends a chill down your back, and suddenly your cheeks feel like they've been dipped in warm wax. With a flourish, he raises his goblet, his laugh echoing like a jester dropped from a rooftop. Let the blessings of wine pour like inspiration into the empty minds of our dear senators, Caligula bellows, and the room responds with laughter, loud, awkward, chaotic laughter, a cacophony akin to hearing a herd of elephants practicing ballet. Oh, but the fun's only beginning. As Caligula settles into his throne, which you imagine must feel like a stolen cloud, he casts his gaze upon the oblivious senators, their faces twitching between forced mirth and sheer terror. One senator, bless his heart, tries to toast, "To our gracious Emperor Caligula." You almost wince as every other senator raises their goblet. But rumor has it that a few have already turned their drink into their very own life rope. In between scaring the life out of you, he decides to play a new game. Guess the dish. Is that a peacock, or are you simply not awake yet? The emperor stands, waving his hands like a maestro, treating the banquet attendees not just as a congregation, but as his personal troupe of marionette performers. Meanwhile, you attempt to maintain equilibrium as you skillfully balance the pitcher. You watch as one senator nearly defects to a corner, stifling a laugh in the midst of an argument about whether or not Caligula should have a third pet dolphin. Spoiler alert, he absolutely should, and it should probably come with a top hat. Meanwhile, you can't help but think, has there ever been a more fitting time to pour wine with the precision of a tightrope walker? All around, the frivolity unfolds like an over-the-top drama. Music bleats from thrashing lyres. There's a court jester juggling. Was that an actual fig? A moment later, a senator suddenly declares his love for baked beans, yet no one dares question him, lest they wind up on the receiving end of Caligula's questionable sense of humor. You pour and smile, sadly wondering if your own life has become a bizarre sitcom set in an extravagant fishbowl. Serving was never supposed to feel like standing at the edge of a soap bubble, the live-action version of a high-stakes episode. But remember, it's all in the name of survival. And at the end of it all, even a measly servant like you could have a story worth telling, if you survive the night without becoming an inspiration for Caligula's next madcap adventure. So, as you absorb this symphony of eccentricity around you, rest easy. The evening may be unsettling, but if laughter echoing off the marble floors can lift the soul, hopefully you'll wake up tomorrow with a newfound appreciation for boring dinner parties, free from the clutches of a madman with a taste for chaos. Who needs Netflix when you have this banquet of bedlam? Now, close your eyes, dear listener, and let the absurdity carry you away to dreams that are just a tad less chaotic. Chapter 8. Caligula's Aquatic Absurdity, the Naval Showdown of Dreams. Hey guys, welcome back to the zany and chaotic world of ancient Rome. Tonight, we're diving into something that makes your neighborhood talent show look like an esteemed Broadway debut, Caligula's naval demonstration. Imagine a performance filled with excitement, oddities, and a side of bread that's more dangerous than a poorly thrown frisbee. Now, before we plunge into the flowing sequins of history, you might be wondering, what was it like to attend a fake naval battle hosted by an emperor with a penchant for unpredictability? Were the oxygen levels high enough to sustain sanity? Or was it all just an elaborate ploy to ensure that bread rations were thrown generously into the crowd while people dodged projectile carbs like ancient gladiators? Ever wondered if serving in Caligula's court was akin to being plucked from obscurity to become a cast member of a reality show where everyone's just trying to stay alive? Spoiler, yes. So, without further ado, close your eyes and imagine this. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 39 AD, snugly nestled between the decorative pillars of Caligula's palace, right before the grand spectacle begins. The sun shines beautifully, reflecting off improvised blue fabric stretched across the courtyard. Yes, that fabric is supposed to represent water. If you squint just right, it almost works. Almost. You can feel the buzz in the air, the heartbeat of a public awaiting a performance that promises to be as refined as a bowl of spaghetti on a roller coaster. Amid the excited chatter of nobles and commoners alike, the scent of roasted meats wafts through the air, mixed with a faint hint of, is that desperation? It must be. People are clamoring and shifting about like the audience before a J-Lo concert, except, in this case, the main act is a half-baked nautical fiasco. Get ready for excitement! Caligula bellows with what you can only describe as rabid glee. He appears like a kid in a candy store, his toga billowing dramatically, as if even it questions his sanity. Your heart races like a chariot as you notice the frenzy of preparation. Servants scuttle around like caffeinated squirrels, setting up invisible ships. Yes, they're wholly imaginary but trustworthy, much like a poorly constructed love story. Now imagine this. Caligula, with the grace of a juggler who has just dropped all the balls, stands on a platform giving orders to non-existent naval captains. Act like you're in full battle, he shouts to his bemused court. The nobles look around nervously, as if confused whether they should cheer or to plot their escape through the cleverly concealed exit labeled, "This way to sanity." Just as you begin to ponder the deeper philosophical questions of life, like whether wearing a toga is just an ancient version of going pantsless, you spot Caligula tossing stale bread into the crowd. It's less of a nautical battle and more of an involuntary carb festival. People scramble, arms flailing, trying to catch the errant breadcrumbs as they sail through the air. Think of it as an extreme form of crowd participation you never signed up for. "Feast upon my generosity!" Caligula exclaims dramatically, as a piece of bread narrowly misses an unsuspecting senator's head, who by the looks of it is contemplating a resignation letter addressed to Dear Sanity. The onlookers erupt into laughter, but you can see the trepidation lingering in their eyes, as if they're betting on whether the bread storm will lead to Caligula's next insanity art installation, or maybe even a spontaneous "you're fired" moment for the closest servant. The stage is set. The imaginary ships are in position, although saying they're in position is generous at best. They look more like patches of mischief. The confusion in the crowd is palpable, as men and women alike try to decipher whether the emperor is a master of amusement or a harbinger of chaos. If people think they're attending the Roman equivalent of Shakespeare in the Park, they're in for a wild ride of absurd proportions. "Prepare the battle!" Caligula shouts again, this time with all the conviction of someone training for the lead role in a drama that never ends well. As the aquatic ballet unfolds before you, it feels like watching a surrealist dream come to life. Except in that dream, everyone's striding around with water wings and a hint of panicked confusion. The crowd is transfixed as Caligula orders the ships to engage in imaginary combat, shouting phrases like "ram them" and "fire the catapults" echo through the courtyard. Somewhere in the back, an old man murmurs something about turning this ridiculous farce into a new Olympic sport. You can almost picture it. Athletes struggling with imaginary ships while trying to dodge flying bread in front of a baffled audience. Yet, there's always a few who are genuinely invested. They cheer and shout amidst the chaos. They're the early adopters of living absurdly, fully vowing allegiance to a man who may or may not have eaten too many pickled fish for breakfast. With bread flying and spirits high, this naval debacle disguises old debts, political strife, and upcoming expenses that are hanging above their heads like storm clouds in a Midwestern drama. As the makeshift performance drags on, you begin to feel the gentle twinges of bewilderment creep in. You wonder if this was historically significant in the grand scheme of things, or just a crazy day trip with a side of bread. The only thing for certain is that the laughter and trial will linger like a fine wine after a bad meal. So here you are, a spectator in the unlikeliest of scenarios. Perhaps you'll wake up tomorrow and recount this moment. Maybe even share it with your friends as a "you won't believe what I saw" tale. But remember, if someone asks you to recreate it, kindly refuse. You know you've fulfilled your daily absurdity quota, and maybe, just maybe, you'll get some much-needed sleep after tonight's chaotic excursion. As you drift away from the echoes of imaginary naval battles and flying bread, let the absurdities carry you softly into your dreams, wishing for less chaos and a touch more comfort at the next dinner party. Sweet dreams. Chapter 9. Caligula's Selfie-Ready Shrine, the Palace of Divine Nonsense. Hey guys, welcome back to your nightly trip through history, a time where the past was even stranger than waking up to see your ex in your new workout class. Tonight, we take a peek into a period where reality was flatter than a sad pancake, and people literally worshipped emperors like they were on some bizarre ancient reality television show called Keeping Up with the Caligulians. That's right. Prepare yourself for absurdity that rivals that one guy's TikTok dance at weddings. Before we jump in headfirst like a Roman into a pool of grape juice, wine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on this adventure, but only if you're truly enjoying the chaos. After all, I wouldn't want to pressure you like an overambitious janitor in a crowded public restroom. Now, dim the lights. Find that slightly questionable throw blanket you haven't washed since last summer, and get ready to slip into a world where incense wafts through the air like your Aunt Linda's perfume at family gatherings. Ever wondered how it felt to serve a ruler who believed his new hairstyle was divine? Or if you'd ever have to plaster on compliments faster than a caffeinated squirrel on a mission? What would happen if you accidentally drowned a statue of him in overly fragrant incense? And how exactly do you compliment someone who carved their face on every statue in town? Is "wow, you really have a nose for greatness" too much? Picture this. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 39 AD, deeply ensconced within the glittering chaos of Caligula's palace. The walls are more flamboyant than a peacock in a sequined jumpsuit, and the air smells suspiciously like a combination of burnt sacrifices and self-importance. You sit up, rubbing your eyes and blinking at the sight of Caligula, a man who, if he had a personal logo, it would simply be his own face framed in gold leaf, because why not? Now, as you cozy into your spot, let's dive into this shrine of absurd modeling, where Caligula dotes on his divinity like he's the center of attention at a surprise birthday party. Standing atop an altar, a very shiny altar, mind you, because we all know how much he loved a good shine, Caligula breathes in deeply, inhaling the sweet-smelling incense as if it holds divine revelation, or, more likely, yesterday's leftover olives. And there he is, draped in lavish fabrics that flow like a wisp of light, breezy fabric took a vacation to a tropical paradise. "I am equal to the stars," he yells, arms outstretched, as if trying to slap them right off the night sky. His ability to mix self-absorbed grandeur and poetic nonsense is nothing short of impressive. You can't help but think, is it pride? Is it insanity? Or is he simply trying too hard to make every mirror feel inadequate? Meanwhile, courtiers flit about like moths drawn to a light bulb, sprinkling compliments as if they're his very own glitter cannon. "O great emperor, you're more pleasing than a summer's day," they chant, some of them desperately hoping the universe hasn't plotted against them with a piece of bread on the side. Seriously, if compliments were currency, they'd be richer than a hog in mud. But listen closely, as the sound of over-flattering praise is akin to nails on a chalkboard, an auditory form of gradual insanity. Let's take a moment to discuss the craftsmanship involved in transforming stern-faced statues of ancient deities into representations of Caligula himself. Statues that once expressed eternal wisdom and solemnity are now forever stuck in an expression of, "What is a selfie?" Should you dare to ask the marble why they have that dopey expression, you could very well get a reply that goes something like, "I'm eternally flattered, but really, I was created for temples, not this ridiculous nonsense." Even they seem to be rolling their eyes through the stone. But wait, what happens when you accidentally trip while carrying a bucket of incense water? Well, you'd better hope it doesn't land on one of those golden effigies, or you might witness a string of Caligula's finest privileges come crashing down. Think of it as walking through a minefield, only instead of explosives, you're trying not to ignite an altercation over alleged divine retribution, or worse, misplacing a fidget spinner. Every whisper of reverent admiration must be meticulously calculated and sprinkled with just the right amount of melodrama. An art form in itself that requires practice, much like pretending to listen to someone talk about their cat's diet. In fact, you might even be summoning concepts akin to Shakespearean drama, minus the depth, and with even more toga-covered insanity. You hear murmurs of a minister cheering loudly, "More incense, my emperor. We must shroud your immaculate visage in a haze thick enough to make the world forget about reality." So, amidst statues that are now socially awkward, incense that hangs in the air heavier than an overstuffed lasagna, and courtiers performing flattery like they missed their cue in a play, perhaps you can ponder this paradox. Does the grandeur elevate Caligula into a god? Or does it just reveal the hollowness of his reign? Spoiler. It mostly just seems to be Caligula hoping someone will take a photo that'll get 1 million likes. because isn't that the goal of all absurdities? As you settle deeper into the absurdity of this divine spectacle, let the laughter of a bygone era drape over you, slowly guiding you toward dreams woven from historical nonsense. May at least your sleep be peaceful, and if you do wake up within a Caligula-esque shrine of your own, invite a statue instead of a messenger to provide the daily compliments. Sweet dreams.
Chapter 10. The Moment of Assassination. Marble mayhem in Caligula's corridor.
Hey guys, welcome back to our nightly romp through the hilarious calamities of history. Tonight, we step into a moment that's colder than a water cooler chat about politics. The snapshot of chaos in Caligula's palace just before a truly out-of-this-world assassination. Think of it as the world's worst game of hide-and-seek, but instead of hiding, everyone's just standing around awkwardly in a corridor adorned with more marble than a 19th century bakery. Before we plunge into the thick, fragrant atmosphere of impending doom, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, only if you genuinely enjoy this nightly jaunt through insanity, that is. How often do you experience a historical murder plot while cozied up in bed? Now, get comfy. Let a cool breeze from the fan caress your worries away. Dim those lights, and let's spin a tale that's juicier than a ripe summer peach. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be a palace guard, standing stiffly in a corridor, trying not to blink in the presence of a capricious emperor? Or, if you'd prefer this over the drama of family gatherings, where everyone argues about whose turn it is to carve the turkey. All right, folks, just like that, congratulations. You've woken up in 41 AD, maybe a little groggy, surrounded by bunting made of real human anxiety and regal ambitions in Caligula's gloriously chaotic marble palace. The place is a cacophony of grandeur and foreboding, a place where what could possibly go wrong becomes the rallying cry of every guard, especially in the moments leading up to absolute mayhem. The scent of iron hangs in the air like a low-budget cologne ad. Think Eau de Bloodshed. You sit up, gazing at guards standing as still as unenthusiastic mannequins at a clearance sale. They clutch their weapons tightly, an ensemble of fragile nerves and lacquered metal, in awkward silence that stretches so thin it's practically a tightrope. Is this the monumental moment when they wish they had taken that job offer at the local bakery instead? A lifetime supply of pastries sounds much better than avoiding eye contact with a half-crazy emperor. You can almost hear them muttering under their collective breaths. Let's take a moment to unpack what's happening here. Spread out before you is an opulent marble corridor, which, let's be real, could use a "caution slippery when red" sign. As guards stand awkwardly, their pale expressions resemble the faces of sugar cookies left in the oven a bit too long. There's a significant number of shattering cups littering the floor, perhaps victims of their own instability, or maybe a tragic pep rally gone wrong. A fallen robe lies nearby, abandoned like a Pokemon card on the schoolyard pavement during lunch. It's the fashion faux pas of the century, embroidered with enough ambition to make even the most fashionable confuse it for a napkin at a fancy restaurant. And speaking of fashion blunders, now's the time to mention the echoing silence that envelops this grand space, louder than your Aunt Mary at Thanksgiving when she debates the best method to baste a turkey. It's a heavy atmosphere, thick with the scent of impending calamity, and probably yesterday's ill-prepared chicken. Can you imagine trying to navigate that mental maze. It's like walking into an exclusive club with no invitation while wearing last season's shoes. You almost expect someone to say, "This is the Emperor's palace, darling. Leave the worries to the professionals." Now, let's think for a moment about the little details that often get overlooked. Like the shattered cups. Ever seen those cups that mistake their porcelain for fragile hopes and dreams? An actual relationship metaphor right there. Meanwhile, those crimson footprints strewn across the floor. They could make an excellent crime scene comedy on a sitcom, complete with enthusiastic audience laughter. Look, it's Bob, and he's spilling the evidence everywhere. Classic Bob. As the weight of history bears down on you, try not to dwell on how many errors led up to this moment. The guards around you glance nervously at each other, their expressions evolving from stern loyalty to a collective existential crisis in 4 blinks or less. Should they be rushing to action? Should they summon their inner gladiators? Or perhaps they all fear being portrayed as mere extras in a chaotic drama that might soon trend on Roman reality TV, Palace Takedown Edition. Every creak of the marble echoes like a drum roll filled with uncomfortable tension. But while they hold that tension, you lean back comfortably on the pillows of your modern-day bed, wishing you could simply reverse this script. Perhaps call in a sassy oracle to offer advice like, "Dude, daydream about a road trip to Pompeii instead of this impending doom." Ultimately, as history unfolds around you, a sense of the absurd cascades over everything. Guards too still, cups shattered, and footprints leading to who knows where. This chaotic moment embodies a kind of timeless truth. Sometimes the grandest of plans dissolve into a hilarious mess. And isn't that just a lovely way to drift into dreams tonight? Imagine waking up in the middle of it all, like an extra in a historical drama where the only dialogue is, "Well, this is awkward." So as you nestle deeper into the chaos of marble corridors and chilling atmospheres, let yourself be guided by the laughter of another age. Take a deep breath. Welcome the absurdity. And remember, the only thing worse than standing around like a wooden soldier is waking up in this palace without a sarcastic quip to offer on your way out. Sweet dreams. Chapter 11. Perfumed madrigals and noble nonsense in the Palazzo Medici. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Why Did They Live Like That? Tonight, we're diving into a world that smells more delightful than a bake sale at a flower shop, yet carries the drama of a soap opera set in a Renaissance art gallery. Yes, we're here for the juicy deets on why servitude in Caligula's palace was the ancient equivalent of trying to find a Wi-Fi signal in a basement. Totally inadequate and rather treacherous. Before we embark on this odyssey of odors and oddities, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on how much you adore these wildly interesting historical escapades. Only if you actually enjoy this, of course. So grab a cozy blanket, dim those lights until they're just perfect for a ghost story, and let's ponder absurd questions. Have you ever found yourself in a perfume chamber, wondering if you'd prefer the smell of roses or your neighbor's choice of fish for dinner? Or gazed in horror at a feast and wished someone would invent takeout before it was invented? Or better yet, have you ever been stuck in a social gathering, looking for an exit strategy while trying not to admit that you're just there for the free food. Congratulations! You've now awakened in Florence, circa 1434, where the Palazzo Medici stands taller than your hopes of getting a tax refund and far more intimidating. Here, the air drips with floral fragrances mingling with far more human scents that could knock you off your sandals. Oh, to have encountered the brutality of noble life, right? Now, let's talk about the perfume chamber. Imagine yourself surrounded by more scents than a mid-September farmer's market, and not a single one comes from something you can eat. Instead, you're enveloped by titillating blends designed to fool the senses. Lavender to resemble calm, with a hefty splash of something that smells suspiciously like regret. It's a delightful trick, truly. Just as you think you're breezing through summer, someone walks by wearing Ode to Medieval Misery, and suddenly you're reconsidering every life choice you've ever made up to this point. As the patriarch of the Medici dynasty, Cosimo de' Medici stands amid this olfactory ensemble, strategizing how to bring noble families together, like overcooked spaghetti trying to cling onto each other for dear life. But there's nothing quite like the delicate balance of power built on strategic seductions and discreet arrangements that feels more like a reality TV audition gone wrong. If only ancient diplomacy had a theme song. Can you just imagine Cosimo dressed in robes that make him look like a sentient potpourri sachet? Today's goal is simple, team. We're going to unite the Guicciardini and the Albizzi families through the power of irresistible fragrances and possibly a well-placed compliment about their hair. Meanwhile, the palace servants bustle around, caught in a whirlwind of polishing marble and wondering why pushy patrons feel the need to perfume the air when they could just fix their own lives. Let's delve into the daily activities of these hard-working servants. When they weren't fending off flamboyantly dressed nobles attempting to share their life goals over a spritz of eau de foreseeing societal connection, they were dealing with the chaotic environments of the palace. The scent of burnt bread filled the corners where they tried to prepare dinner, and the kitchen was less of a Michelin star experience and more like if your toddler decided to throw a wild pizza party during an earthquake. Ever wonder how it feels to serve a meat dish prepared using an extensive array of spices, meant to distract you from the fact that the meat might be just a bit on the "let's not discuss this" side of things? Picture a banquet where everything looks so enchanting, but at the core, you're just there holding the silver platter while internally debating whether you could trade your job for a pet goldfish. And speaking of feasting, imagine serving a 3-course meal at a time when the dining room table felt like a stage for awkward performances. Nobles are reclining on cushions like they're at a beach resort during summer, munching their briny squid with a side of judgment. The laughter ringing through the air, it's not just friendly ambience. It's the sound of disgrace landing hard on those perceived as socially naive. At least in modern dining you could misplace your fork as a cover for your sins. Adding to the oddity, let's not forget about hygiene practices, or lack thereof. The idea of bathing was still as revolutionary as the concept of scented candles. Cosimo, and every other noble gentleman you can imagine, might think they smell like a potpourri masterpiece. but you can bet your last Roman denarius that nearby servants could clear a room with a mere shift. Ah yes, that's the rich aroma of Calabrian olives mixed dangerously with an unwashed toga, they might say, waving their hands in front of their noses. As you drift deeper into this floral and foamy realm, you realize that the life of a servant was not just about feasts and fragrances. It was about surviving the delicate balancing act of noble expectations, while navigating the regular chaos of patron demands. Imagine those moments of camaraderie, hushed whispers and rolled eyes shared behind ornate columns, as they exchanged tales of yet another noble trying to sit in their own melted tarts. And as you lay back against your pillows, perhaps this glimpse into the perfumed chaos of the Palazzo Medici will send you off dreaming of a life more sanitized and less clingy than that of a palace servant. You know, where the biggest worry is deciding whether you want pizza or Chinese food for dinner, and not afraid of life under a cloth soaked in eau de unsatisfied aspirations. Sleep tight.
Chapter 12. Lucrezia Donati, the mistress of the magnificent misery. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the delightful chaos that is the life of Lucrezia Donati, the mistress of Lorenzo the Magnificent, a juggler of nobility, politics, and the most fabulous hairstyles you've ever seen. Imagine if your high school drama club met at an opera house and decided to write their own political manifesto over a hearty dinner. Yes, my friends, it's that wonderful level of absurdity mixed with power suits from the Renaissance. Before we head into this opera of audacity and allegory, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, if you actually enjoy this extravaganza of history, of course. So, dim those lights, perhaps swirl around your favorite scented candle like you're preparing for a spell, and get comfy. Have you ever strolled through a gallery, wondering if art really speaks, or if it just smirks at your outfit choice? Or maybe you found yourself in a conversation so awkward that you start to contemplate your pet's opinions instead. Perhaps you've ever managed to turn a simple coffee date into a festival of misunderstanding. If so, congratulations. You're now primed for encountering Lucrezia Donati, a woman who expertly danced the line between love, power, and demanding divas. Welcome to Florence in the late 1400s, where the air is thick with ambition and the smells of freshly painted canvases. In this world, beauty isn't just a form of social currency. It's the entire economy. The Medici bank accounts didn't hold riches in mere coins. They cradled the worth of glittering gold frames encasing Lucrezia's resplendent visage. So, let's talk about Lucrezia, shall we? As Lorenzo the Magnificent's charmingly clandestine partner, she wove through the political web with the agility of a cat avoiding a bath. Imagine negotiating treaties while balancing on a beam made of suggestion and scandal. This was no easy feat. Have you ever tried performing a balancing act in stilettos on a tightrope made of spaghetti? It's like flirting with disaster, only with more drama and fewer uncooked noodles.
Every morning, you might find Lucrezia sprucing herself up, not just for any occasion, but to captivate the assembly of powerful men and would-be allies around her. The tension in the air during these gatherings was palpable, like waiting for your friend to finally open their Tinder DMs while you sit beside each other in awkward silence. Do you think it's smart to communicate with a messenger pigeon when no one uses carrier snails anymore? Now, stepping into the shoes of a servant in the Palazzo Medici is like stepping into a whirlwind of color and chaos. The servants ran around, polishing marble that sparkled like an overblown Instagram filter, and preparing meals that looked like Picasso attempts gone wrong. Have you ever tried making gourmet food, and the kitchen ended up looking like a food fight had taken place? Now think of a room filled with nobles, seated like brocade-clad scarecrows, whispering about each other's threads, whilst munching on suspiciously unidentifiable meat. And speaking of the food, you've got to love those Renaissance banquets. Picture an enormous table where every item is as substantial as a daydream. Roasted peacock, savory pastries filled with mysterious things you don't want to ask about. And there you are, stuck with an empty platter, wondering if you can trade it for leftovers. Servants, bless your souls, had the arduous task of distributing these extravagant dishes while pretending they didn't notice the nobles spooning inappropriate amounts of sauce over what could have been last week's stew. While they navigated this culinary carnival, you could hear the servants mumble among themselves, sometimes shooting furtive glances at nobles whose heads were buried in their plates like a turtle retreating into its shell. Is he still eating, or should we just submit him to the Inquisition for excessive consumption? Meals in this palace rarely ended without some overzealous courtier managing to embarrass themselves in a food debacle that might just go down in history. And let's touch upon hygiene as it relates to our dear Lucrezia. Bathing was about as common as noblemen seeking therapy. The art of cleanliness was rather theoretical, as water was a precious resource, often reserved for drinking or some kind of fancy floral display. So, noble life involved an elaborate negotiation. Do we use precious water to cleanse ourselves, or to make that delightful rose-flavored wine? There you are, well-groomed and delicately scented, while others around you manage to create a sophisticated bouquet reminiscent of a wet goat mixed with an abandoned French cheese left to marinate in the sun. Social graces meant avoiding confrontations over body odor, an Olympic sport in these courts. Cue the whispers. Did you notice Lord Ambrose? Breath like a sulfur pit, and looks like he's smuggling half a cheese wheel under that tunic. In the grand theater of history, Lucrezia understood the stage well. Each interaction was laced with intrigue, where a single glance could spark a scandal stronger than the finest vintage wine. Picture her managing to evade dishonor, while simultaneously whispering secrets that could topple families, just as you might negotiate the last bite of pizza at a party like a Cold War diplomat. As you lean back into your pillows, maybe it's moments like these, a blend of relationships, power balances, and culinary catastrophes that soothe you toward a peaceful slumber. And remember, in the circus of history, where beauty held dominion, never underestimate the power of a well-timed eye roll or the discreet maneuvering behind a hypnotic smile. Sleep tight, and may your dreams taste more like cheese than goat. Chapter 13. Clarice Orsini, the quietly commanding First Lady of Florence. Hey guys, tonight we're wading through the mist of history with Clarice Orsini, 1 part devoted wife, 2 parts shrewd power player, and a sprinkle of, is this marriage even working? Please dim those lights and get cozy, because we'll unravel a tale fluffier than a Renaissance pastry and stickier than your aunt's famous fruitcake. So tell me, have you ever experienced the delightful agony of living with someone who seems to be perpetually distracted, perhaps by their own reflection in a window? Or maybe you've had your heart set on some quality time as you wait with bated breath while your partner intently tries to decide whether that new shirt really goes with their vibe. Imagine coupling those moments with the stress of managing a household in a palace as chaotic as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. Yes, dear listener, you are about to dive headfirst into the not-so-gilded life of a woman whose daily drama could put any modern soap opera to shame. Congratulations! You've just awakened amid the sumptuous chaos of Florence in the Italian Renaissance, circa 1475. It's a vibrant swirl of art, scandal, and the occasional peasant trying desperately not to slip on a fresh pile of cow dung. What a time to be alive! Friends and foes share the same bustling streets, while painters, think Leonardo and Michelangelo, draw inspiration from the shenanigans of those around them, sometimes using Clarice herself as their muse. It was a gold mine of gossip waiting to happen, and she was right at the center of it all. Let's talk a bit about our dear Clarice, shall we? Raised in a convent, so perhaps a touch more disciplined than most, she married Lorenzo de' Medici, the Medici prince with the charm of 1,000 roses and the attention span of a goldfish. This meant, much to her chagrin, that she often had to remind him of, well, everything. Oh, you're attending a public function with the local bishops today? How delightful! Maybe you should wear pants, love. Such is the life of the woman who swore to support her husband's grandeur while secretly managing a juggling act of family respect and high society intrigue. Picture this: Clarice walking through the marble corridors of the Palazzo Medici, while noblemen bowed and courtiers swooned over her. Of course, dear billowy-sleeved nobleman, I'm simply overseeing the renovations of Lorenzo's art collection. But do tell me, is that shirt even in season this year? You can almost hear the whispers trailing behind, as she calmly gathers allies, not through loud proclamations, but through the kind of quiet, strategic chat that had bishops thinking they were in a high-stakes chess game, while they were merely pawns in her much larger narrative. Meanwhile, Lorenzo might be gallivanting about promising the stars and moon while forgetting the groceries and the names of their children. Sweetheart, did you remember to pick up the kids from their lessons today? No? Well, you might want to make that your next political initiative. She might murmur, but only after gracefully accepting his latest excuse. It's all part of the job, after all. Because in her world, maintaining family respectability felt a little like keeping a porcelain figurine from toppling off a shelf during an earthquake. You can balance anything if you know how to play your cards right. Now, Clarice's ability to curry favor with bishops was a masterclass in diplomacy wrapped in exquisitely embroidered silks. She understood perfectly. A well-placed compliment is worth more than all the gold in that extravagant collection she merely oversees. What a wonderful candlestick you're sporting, Bishop. Did the artisans overcharge you, or are you simply blessed with excellent taste? You can imagine the bishop's cheeks turning a shade similar to a summer-ripe tomato, while he mentally tallies the compliments earned. Surely a woman like you should have a gilded version of it for her chamber. Ah, the art of deflection and flattery. In one clever sentence, she had potentially earned herself a favor while deflating his ego like a punctured balloon. Let's not forget the daily life behind those grand walls. Servants bustling around like poorly trained pigeons, everything sparkling and polished to within an inch of its life. The kitchen smelled like a cross between decadent pastries and something tragically left unattended. It's like if a Renaissance banquet and a modern cooking show had a child, and it didn't know the meaning of portion control. Servants flitted about, encouraged by Clarice's subtly commanding presence. In the tapestry of it all, Clarice became the undisputed queen of depth and dexterity. She navigated the complexities of her marriage with the skill of a master archer, hitting life's targets while often just missing the bullseye, but looking spectacular while doing so. And as Lorenzo continued to charm crowds and forget critical family details, dear Clarice quietly became the storm behind the calm, her whispers of influence shaping the very fabric of power dynamics in Florence. So, as you settle into your pillows tonight, wrap yourself in the tale of a woman who danced on the high wires of Renaissance life, one who saw past the madcap splendor around her to find power in the subtleties. Sleep well, dear listeners, and remind yourself that sometimes it's the quieter voices that echo the loudest through history. Chapter 14. Servitude, Secrets, and Shenanigans in Caligula's Casino Palace. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something more chaotic than a cat in a room full of laser pointers. The world of Caligula's palace. Picture a place where whimsy meets whimsy's slightly weirder cousin. Think less glamorous getaway and more dystopian circus. It's a mashup of madness, where folks swing from high society to high-stakes madness faster than you can say, imperial epic fail. So, if you've ever felt like your job was 90% confusion and 10% praying the boss doesn't notice you're on Instagram instead of dealing with spreadsheets, imagine being a servant in Caligula's palace. Let's get comfy and dim those lights, but not too dim, or you might miss the Burning Man-level extravagance waiting to escape from the pages of history and into your dreams. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to bring coffee to a guy who might want to threaten you with a flaming baguette just for laughs? Or perhaps you've pondered whether the wild parties were filled with more chaos than a toddler's birthday party gone wrong. Was it all fine wine and fantasy, or did it sometimes feel like an extra in a horror movie? Put on your imaginary toga as we prepare to navigate through echoing halls filled with the sounds of laughter, betrayal, and maybe a few too many bad decisions. Congratulations! You've just woken up in 37 AD in the shockingly overstimulated extravaganza of ancient Rome, specifically Caligula's palace, where decorum may as well be a lost cause, and servants are about as well paid and respected as a flip phone in a smartphone shop. Let's set the scene. The Palazzo di Giove, where every wall is adorned with outrageous statues, some of which look more like confused vegetables than deities. It's a place where the air is thick not just with the scent of opulent feasts, but with the undertones of political intrigue that could put your local soap opera to shame. The serving staff scuttles around like hyperactive ants, trying desperately to avoid drawing the attention of the eccentric emperor. Imagine for a moment the overwhelming chaos. The moment you brave the threshold, it's a symphony of sound and smells. Every layer of humanity smells slightly different, and the blend is, well, not delightful. Behind you, a toga-clad party-goer, who you can only assume is either a philosopher or someone who skipped breakfast, grabs you by the arm. "More wine! Bring me the rarest vintage," he bellows, belching loudly, irrevocably proving last night's banquet is still taking residence in his guts. Caligula's empire thrums with the kind of extravagant energy that would make an online influencer weep with envy. Every banquet is a bacchanalian feast of excess. Just when you think you've seen it all, the emperor decides that swimming in a tub full of pearls is the perfect idea. Yes, pearls. And we're not talking just a few. This is a full-blown pearl party, my friend, where the drinks are flowing faster than politeness exits the building. But let's not get sidetracked. Being a servant here is no walk in the park. Every day you dodge the chaotic reign of a man who once decided to declare war on Neptune. Yes, the sea god. You're not just keeping food warm. You're navigating a disaster zone where the whim of your emperor might tumble into the nefarious depths of insanity. One slip-up, and you might find yourself the unwitting star of a Caligulan embarrassment. Look at the clumsy servant. Shall we feed him to the lions? And speaking of lions, those beasts could often be found lounging around the palace, because why wouldn't you have a pet lion during your dinner parties? Just imagine the thrill, or sheer terror, of trying to serve dinner while avoiding the sharp end of a reclusive feline's critique. Excellent lamb chop, but where's the baked goods? Roar! On the culinary front, the kitchen is a warped vortex of ambitious chefs trying to outdo each other with absurd dishes. Mice stuffed with figs? Sure. Sea urchin ice cream? Why not? You kind of have to admire the creativity. Just think of it as ancient Rome's version of a food truck fest. But you may be questioning your life choices when you're assigned to chop ingredients while dodging busybodies and half-thought-out assassination plots. Transitioning from the chaos of food prep to grand parties is like going from washing your dishes in the kitchen to suddenly training for the Olympics. The atmosphere is not just jovial, it's a bubbling cauldron of gossip, intrigue, and backstabbing. You sometimes wonder whether you're working in a banquet hall or the set of a reality TV show. Hey, think Real Housewives of Rome. Invitations galore. Sure, you'd love to join, if only it didn't mean risking your life and dignity at every turn. Each party feels like it could end in a game of political chess, but with a side of pin the blame on the servant. It's less about the food and more about outwitting your colleagues while your emperor hurls sentimentality, like, "Do you not sense the weight of my power?" mixed with a calamitous dose of absurdity. Because, honestly, there's no one quite like Caligula, who knew how to efficiently turn palace life into a slapstick comedy on steroids. Now, as you settle into your dreams, remember the wild world of Caligula's palace, where the lighter atmosphere belies the darker currents swirling beneath. Think of the audacity of it all, of servants balancing roles, desires, and the constant gamble of surviving the next wild dinner party or imperial whim. Sleep tight, dear listeners, and may your dreams be filled with eccentric emperors, absurd feasts, and the reminder that sometimes absurdity finds a way to echo through the ages.
Chapter 15. The Rise and Shine of a Medici Misfit. Hey guys, tonight we're about to wander down a historical rabbit hole so tangled that even a wizard would need a map. Welcome to the life of an illegitimate son of the Medici. Imagine being tagged as the family's oopsie baby, destined for greatness, but constantly dodging the awkward conversations that follow family reunions. If you've ever found yourself stuck in a meeting where you're not quite sure what's happening, or worse, why you're even there, consider how this chap felt. We're talking about a life where sin and success are shrewdly intertwined, like using a fork to eat spaghetti while simultaneously defending yourself from a rabid meatball. So if you're ready to discover what it means to be a pawn in the grand game of Medici chess, a game where the stakes include cardinal hats and questionable family dinners, get cozy, dim those lights, and prepare for a nice long snooze with a side of Snickers. Ever thought about what it's like waking up knowing your whole life is a political chess play? Or maybe you wondered how many tears it takes to fill a bathtub when your dad is a powerful duke, and your mom, well, she's just trying to make her own way while keeping you out of the family photo. Is illegitimate on a business card considered a title? How many times did our young friend here receive a compliment that was really just a reminder of his finding in a casual Friday dinner conversation? Picture grown-ups tiptoeing around an emotional landmine, all while sipping overpriced wine and dodging awkward questions like it's an Olympic sport. Congratulations. You've just woken up in Renaissance Florence, and believe me, it's as vibrant as a hookah lounge, but with a lot less smoke and a stunningly higher risk of plague. As you gaze out at the frescoed walls, you feel both awe and dread. Those intricate designs showcase scenes of piety that could inspire deep reflection, or just make you feel inadequate, like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while riding a unicycle. The Medici household is a kaleidoscope of artistry and ambition, which, while beautiful, could just as easily tear you to pieces if you're not careful. Now, let's set the stage for our guy with all the advantages, albeit slightly tarnished, of having the Medici name. His education? Imagine Hogwarts crossed with a family reunion so ridiculously convoluted that even a summer camp for superheroes would feel run-of-the-mill. He's swooping in and out of classrooms like he's the most popular kid on campus. His tutors? They're not just scholars. They're a collection of 1 part Renaissance man, 2 parts Renaissance drama queen. They might impart wisdom on politics while veering off into highly detailed rants about the best way to fry zucchini blossoms. But the big question is, how does one prepare for a cardinal hat when your life feels like a perpetual balancing act on a tightrope made of spaghetti? Picture this. Afternoons filled with lectures on theology, punctuated by clandestine trips to flee familial expectations. Servants shuffle through the halls, tossing food scraps in the air, just to see if anyone will actually catch them.
Whispered snippets of conversation float through the air like confetti. Why do we need him as a cardinal? Can't we just define sin in a family meeting? The smell wafting from the kitchens is something that could either make or break your day. On one hand, it's the allure of fresh pasta and roasted meats. On the other, it's scents that hint at far less appetizing remedies for the occasional bout of dysentery. You can almost hear the kitchen drama in the distance, with cooks arguing over who made the finest ratatouille. That's not how you toss basil, Lorenzo. And let's not forget the family gatherings. Lessons learned in the art of political maneuvering, more intense than a competitive round of Twister gone awry. Well, dear cousin, as my illegitimate son, you can always graciously accept your role at the back of the family portrait. It's a constant balancing act between love, acceptance, and needing to dodge a metaphorical pie in the face during dinner-time debates. Unlocking the secrets of the universe feels much simpler in comparison. Each day in this gilded cage offers a chance to elevate, or perhaps ruin, his family's delicate political dance. Dreams of power and wealth hover just out of reach, enchanting, yet infuriating. As you lie there, consider the pressure. Will he live to be a respected cardinal, or just another forgotten son, hidden behind the velvet curtains of family shame? And there you have it, the stunning, mildly absurd tale of a man caught in the Medici net, where sin has a sneaky way of serving the family's aspirations. As you drift into your snooze, allow the thoughts of Renaissance mysteries and cheeky familial dynamics to swirl like delicate hints of perfume in your dreams. Rest easy, dear listeners, and remember that sometimes our most substantial legacies are written in the pages of our less than ideal beginnings. Sweet dreams of Venetian masks and political intrigue. Chapter 16. Banquets, brawls, and bizarre performances inside Pope Leo X's Vatican Carnival. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a Vatican banquet that's wilder than a family reunion filled with uninvited relatives. Welcome to the lavish soiree of Pope Leo X. This gathering resembles a Florentine carnival, but with a lot more gold and fewer clowns. So we're not talking about a simple pasta dinner here. You might want to strap in, because there's feasting, frivolity, and whispers of scandal that make your last Zoom meeting feel like a riveting documentary about paint drying. Now, before we plunge into this absurdly opulent affair, let's take a moment to ponder some important questions, shall we? Have you ever attended a party that missed the mark so badly that you'd prefer watching paint dry instead? Or maybe you've been to a potluck where Grandma's mystery casserole left you questioning life choices. Imagine the thrill and dread of attending a banquet in the heart of Rome, where divine authority mingles with the questionable interests of politicians. Was that someone flirting with the Pope? Or are your eyes just deceiving you? Spoiler alert, it's definitely both. As you prepare to float through this glorious evening, dim the lights, grab a cozy throw, and let your imagination frolic through the grand halls of the Vatican, bedecked in more gold than a rap star's music video. You have officially woken up in 1513, the year of pizza, portly clergy, and Pope Leo X's famed carnival-like banquet. Congratulations! You've just stepped into a banquet room that defies belief. Picture this. Marble columns tower over you like ancient sentinels keeping watch over mischief, all while laden with gold-plated platters that seem more suited for a movie set than a meal. The air is scented with rich roasted meats. Think sizzling boar and duck with plump figs, calling to you like sirens luring sailors during treacherous seas. And then, oh dear, there are the dancers. Yes, exotic entertainers whirl about, swirling veils and twinkling chimes, doing their best to distract you from the fact that the actual food is probably colder than your ex's heart. You can almost hear one of them whispering, "Can you believe we're performing for a pontiff? He could turn me into a pillar of salt if I trip." Take a moment to cringe at the image of someone dramatically slipping on an olive. Trust me, it's a sight for sore eyes. And what is a good banquet without some juicy gossip floating through the air like an ill-timed comment on social media? Imagine the tables teeming with priests, cardinals, and hangers-on, whispering scandalous tales, punctuated by hearty laughs and the clink of goblets filled with wine that might very well have originated from Bacchus's private stash. Did you hear what Cardinal so-and-so did last Thursday? How brazen, you might overhear, as someone suddenly chokes on the overly rich pâté that practically holds a grudge against the common man's dinner plate. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of people feasting like kings while the rest of the world is left out in the cold. Literally. Remember when you invited your buddies over and realized too late you had run out of snacks, and they showed up expecting an all-you-can-eat buffet? Now imagine that embarrassment amplified 100-fold, with the fate of the church potentially hanging in balance. In this banquet, every food choice is a political statement. I absolutely oppose the idea of having that bland porridge. How dare you? So there you are, trying your best to keep up with the whirlwind of gaiety around you. Dancers flip and twirl. You accidentally make awkward eye contact with a cardinal as your eyes roam for someone who looks just as confused as you feel. Alas, they've spotted a plate of duck that's calling their name. Why is the duck always eyeing you like that? Amidst the tapestry of laughter and floating fragrances, there are those inevitable moments that catch you off guard. Someone lets out a sneeze that echoes louder than the Pope's Sunday sermon, and like clockwork, the entire room goes silent, only to erupt in laughter moments later. Because nothing says success at a papal banquet quite like a shared awkwardness that unites the masses. Now, as you sit back and sip from a goblet, hopefully not too much of that eye-watering wine, don't forget to take notice of what else is going on. Look to your left. Someone's sweating nervously over who their next target will be in this elaborate game of political chess. Yikes, talk about pressure. You know those moments at work when the boss casually mentions, "Let's have a chat." Imagine that amplified by 1,000, paired with the knowledge that your fate and favors are hanging on whatever you say next to His Holiness. As evening wears on and the banquets turn into a bizarre mix of mirth and mild chaos, you can't help but reflect on the canvas of ridiculousness that is this banquet. It's a bizarre blend of divine purpose and earthly indulgence, where whispers of scandal swirl like the capes of the dancers, gracefully navigating the chaos. So, there you have it. Picture yourself floating through this carnival of soiree absurdities, where food and politics go hand in hand, like unexpected best friends encountering each other at the grocery store. You can't make this stuff up, and as you drift into slumber, let the echoes of laughter and whispers of intrigue cradle you to sleep. Because, dear listener, even in a gilded palace filled with rampant revelry, human insecurity knows no bounds. Sweet dreams of wild banquets and dancing scandals await you. Chapter 16. Banquets, brawls, and bizarre performances. Inside Pope Leo X's Vatican Carnival. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a Vatican banquet that's wilder than a family reunion filled with uninvited relatives. Welcome to the lavish soiree of Pope Leo X. This gathering resembles a Florentine carnival, but with a lot more gold and fewer clowns. So we're not talking about a simple pasta dinner here. You might want to strap in because there's feasting, frivolity, and whispers of scandal that make your last Zoom meeting feel like a riveting documentary about paint drying. Now, before we plunge into this absurdly opulent affair, let's take a moment to ponder some important questions, shall we? Have you ever attended a party that missed the mark so badly that you'd prefer watching paint dry instead? Or maybe you've been to a potluck where Grandma's mystery casserole left you questioning life choices. Imagine the thrill and dread of attending a banquet in the heart of Rome, where divine authority mingles with the questionable interests of politicians. Was that someone flirting with the Pope, or are your eyes just deceiving you? Spoiler alert, it's definitely both. As you prepare to float through this glorious evening, dim the lights, grab a cozy throw, and let your imagination frolic through the grand halls of the Vatican, bedecked in more gold than a rap star's music video. You have officially woken up in 1513, the year of pizza, portly clergy, and Pope Leo X's famed carnival-like banquet. Congratulations! You've just stepped into a banquet room that defies belief. Picture this. Marble columns tower over you like ancient sentinels keeping watch over mischief, all while laden with gold-plated platters that seem more suited for a movie set than a meal. The air is scented with rich roasted meats. Think sizzling boar and duck with plump figs, calling to you like sirens luring sailors during treacherous seas. And then, oh dear, there are the dancers. Yes, exotic entertainers whirl about, swirling veils and twinkling chimes, doing their best to distract you from the fact that the actual food is probably colder than your ex's heart. You can almost hear one of them whispering, "Can you believe we're performing for a pontiff? He could turn me into a pillar of salt if I trip." Take a moment to cringe at the image of someone dramatically slipping on an olive. Trust me, it's a sight for sore eyes. And what is a good banquet without some juicy gossip floating through the air like an ill-timed comment on social media? Imagine the tables teeming with priests, cardinals, and hangers-on whispering scandalous tales, punctuated by hearty laughs and the clink of goblets filled with wine that might very well have originated from Bacchus's private stash. Did you hear what Cardinal so-and-so did last Thursday? How brazen, you might overhear, as someone suddenly chokes on the overly rich pâté that practically holds a grudge against the common man's dinner plate. Let's take a moment to appreciate the sheer absurdity of people feasting like kings while the rest of the world is left out in the cold. Literally. Remember when you invited your buddies over and realized too late you had run out of snacks, and they showed up expecting an all-you-can-eat buffet? Now imagine that embarrassment amplified 100-fold, with the fate of the church potentially hanging in balance. In this banquet, every food choice is a political statement. I absolutely oppose the idea of having that bland porridge. How dare you? So there you are, trying your best to keep up with the whirlwind of gaiety around you. Dancers flip and twirl. You accidentally make awkward eye contact with a cardinal as your eyes roam for someone who looks just as confused as you feel. Alas, they've spotted a plate of duck that's calling their name. Why is the duck always eyeing you like that? Amidst the tapestry of laughter and floating fragrances, there are those inevitable moments that catch you off guard. Someone lets out a sneeze that echoes louder than the Pope's Sunday sermon, and like clockwork, the entire room goes silent, only to erupt in laughter moments later. Because nothing says success at a papal banquet quite like a shared awkwardness that unites the masses. Now, as you sit back and sip from a goblet, hopefully not too much of that eye-watering wine, don't forget to take notice of what else is going on. Look to your left. Someone's sweating nervously over who their next target will be in this elaborate game of political chess. Yikes! Talk about pressure. You know those moments at work when the boss casually mentions, "Let's have a chat." Imagine that amplified by 1,000, paired with the knowledge that your fate and favors are hanging on whatever you say next to His Holiness. As evening wears on and the banquets turn into a bizarre mix of mirth and mild chaos, you can't help but reflect on the canvas of ridiculousness that is this banquet. It's a bizarre blend of divine purpose and earthly indulgence, where whispers of scandal swirl like the capes of the dancers, gracefully navigating the chaos. So there you have it. Picture yourself floating through this carnival of soiree absurdities, where food and politics go hand in hand like unexpected best friends encountering each other at the grocery store. You can't make this stuff up, and as you drift into slumber, let the echoes of laughter and whispers of intrigue cradle you to sleep. Because, dear listener, even in a gilded palace filled with rampant revelry, human insecurity knows no bounds. Sweet dreams of wild banquets and dancing scandals await you.
Chapter 17. The Secret Life of a Florentine Courtesan.
Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the whirlwind world of servitude in Caligula's palace and contrasting it with the sophisticated salons of Renaissance Florence, where the wine is free-flowing and the secrets are juicier than a ripe tomato in a summer garden. That's right, we're talking posh courtesans like Tullia di Aragona, who could charm the robes off a bishop while casually weaving her web of intrigue, much like you avoid making eye contact with your neighbor while sneaking off to the grocery store in your pajamas. So let's take a moment. Have you ever tried to outwit your way through a monotonous office meeting, dodging questions and flattery like a pro? Or perhaps you've snuck a precious donut at a potluck, all the while pretending to be focused on discussing the weather? Imagine if your entire life was one big game of social chess, where the stakes involved not just donuts, but the very essence of political power. I mean, how do you give your best side eye while sipping improperly mixed drinks? Now picture yourself in Renaissance Florence, where every cobblestone is steeped in artistic ambition, yet the air is still thick with secrets, scandals, and those awkward moments when you realize you're underdressed at a soiree. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the opulent world of 16th century Italy, where the Medici have turned art and politics into an elaborate game of social gambits, and you're at the center of it all, like a miniature Michelangelo sculpting your own destiny, one flirtation at a time. Imagine strolling through the streets of Florence, adorned in a gown or tunic that would make modern fashion sensibilities weep with envy, or perhaps indignation. The silk is shimmering, and the colors are brighter than anything you'd find at a local thrift shop. Lavish embroidery twinkles in the soft light, but just before you give yourself too much credit, remember that the undergarments are still akin to wearing a small pasture on your body. Feels luxurious, or does it scratch like 100 tiny burrs? Tough call, really. Now let's talk about Tullia, the grande dame of dialogue, the queen of conversational witticisms. Like the world's first influencer, she curated not just a salon, but a whole convo club where the plush couches welcomed poets and diplomats alike to sip wine, share knowledge, and, oh yes, spill secrets like they were cheap Chianti. Ever try hosting a team-building activity in a conference room? This puts that to shame. You'd arrive at her salon and the air would practically hum with energy. The faint aroma of sandalwood wafts softly, mingling with the unmistakable musk of intrigue. Scholars, knowing she wielded knowledge sharper than a trident, would congregate around as if drawn to an elaborate board game where victory meant not merely winning an argument, but scoring an ally. Or better yet, potential lovers. Ever tried convincing your insistent neighbor that yes, you absolutely do want to discuss their cat's diet plans instead of watching Netflix? Some days it feels like diplomacy 101. Rowdy peasants she wasn't. No, Tullia played her players like a maestro, directing the finest orchestra. Her words laced with the kind of sweet poison that would leave her rivals blissfully unaware of the traps she laid. Did you know the Duke fancied himself a poet? Oh, by the way, I heard the chief advisor has a soft spot for plum pastries. You could practically hear her cackle through the tapestry-lined walls. One can only imagine the tension simmering beneath those charming, crafted conversations. Scholars would gather, elbows brushing, eyebrows raised, murmuring tales of political maneuvering that resembled plot twists in a rom-com. Did you hear Agostino is back in town? One would query, their tones dipping below a whisper. I heard he couldn't decide between the crown or the crown princess. Corners of cushions were worn thin from spilled thoughts and strategically planted ideas. Who needs a crystal ball when you can operate a salon full of keen minds? And all the while Tullia would be observing, ever so keen, like a hawk spotting its dinner from miles away. She wasn't just a pretty face amidst glass goblets. She was the hidden mastermind, mixing scandal with charm, while the men grappled for control of the conversation. Much like in meetings, where you can predict who will take credit for the donuts, but not realize who's placing a cheeky croissant right under the table for later. But her life wasn't all splendid gowns and persuasive dialogue. On the flip side, there were moments she faced clients more tangled than a family tree at a Thanksgiving dinner. "Darling, you said you'd scale Mount Doom with me, yet here you are with a roll of sausage." I swear, I thought I heard the sizzle too. Tulia may have remarked just as smoothly as she would slip a grape into her mouth. Because what's a little gossip without a snack? In the din of discovery and deception, you can practically hear the echo of laughter, punctuated by the clash of wine goblets and murmurs of mischief. For, dear listener, the chaotic dance of power, pleasure, and plots, all simmering beneath the golden facade of art and intrigue, is what makes Florence an irresistible tapestry of outdoor debates turned, occasionally, sour. And just like navigating modern-day drama, one thing remains consistent. Everyone's trying to outsmart the other, while ensuring they still look fab doing so. So, as you drift off, imagine tonight's swirling stories wrapped in silks, the laughter of the learned, and the pungent secrets tucked away like treasures waiting to be unearthed. In the whimsical chessboard of life during the Renaissance, you could always count on the courtesans to keep things mildly interesting. Though the truth be told, nothing could ever be as simple as it seemed. Certainly not even in the realm of wine and wickedness. Chapter 18. The Bonfire of Vanities. Florence gets intense. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the combustibly chaotic world of Renaissance Florence, where the only thing burning hotter than the sun is the drama in the streets, fueled by a fervent preacher with a penchant for pyrotechnics. Imagine this: the once coveted masterpieces crafted by the Medici, paintings, perfumes, and poetry, are being tossed onto bonfires like yesterday's leftovers. If you thought your last Tinder date went up in flames, just wait until you hear about Savonarola's fiery ascension. So grab your favorite pillow and a snuggly blanket, unless it's made of goat hair, because let's face it, that's just asking for splitters. If you enjoy these wild histories, and who wouldn't, take a moment to like, subscribe, and maybe even comment about how sweeping flames through Florence parallels your own distaste for cleaning up after your kids. But only if you actually enjoy this. Now, close your eyes, dim the lights, and crank up that soothing fan. Picture yourself in Florence circa 1495. The sun is beaming down like an over-eager sales clerk, and the air smells like a bunch of flowers got trapped in a tight hug from a couple of sweat-soaked peasants who forgot what personal hygiene means. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to march through a crowd wielding an unyielding devotion to piety, while simultaneously side-eyeing that guy who keeps flashing his masterpiece, a nude statue that's more exposed than a local artist at a gallery gala? Are you ready to toss out the decorum along with the decadent funds meant for that new fancy scarf you had your eye on? Congratulations. You've just woken up in Florence, where the year is 1495, and the only thing more intense than a scorching sun is the moral backlash against all things indulgent. Here's what's happening. Our friend Savonarola, a fiery preacher with a talent for rabble-rousing, is leading a campaign against the Medici legacy and anything remotely hedonistic. It's basically a moral cleanse, and you're feeling as awkward as that one friend forced to watch while everyone else enjoys dessert. Imagine standing in the middle of the piazza, cocking your head sideways, and attempting to grasp the concept of abandonment over your extravagant lifestyle. Sneaking a glance, you'll see bonfires blazing in front of you, fueled not by wood, but by the artistic endeavors that made Florence more glamorous than a reality TV reunion special. What's in? You ponder, as the embers consume paintings by Botticelli like a toddler at an all-you-can-eat buffet. Just as you think it can't get any weirder, someone tosses a bottle of perfume into the flames, sending forth arcing, fragrant fire like a hyperactive dragon in a toy store. Now, if you think it's hard to please your cat with new treats, just try to fathom the chaos as courtesans, poets, and artists grapple with the rise and fall of their creative expression. The fervor is palpable, kind of like trying to convince your buddy that attending a chemical engineering lecture will open new worlds of understanding about life. But have you ever been to a bonfire party? You can almost hear one artist whine, clutching his charcoal sketches as though they're his life's work. Spoiler alert, maybe they were. Let's take a moment to address the daily grind under this moral upheaval. Life wasn't just peachy. The streets were fraught with tension, and your mornings were regularly interrupted by Savonarola's booming voice echoing through the city like the opening beat of your jam playlist. Only, instead of banging down the beats, he was banging down the avant-garde lifestyles. Picture the scene. You step out for some morning mimosas, and boom, you're thrusted into a spontaneous lecture about how the Renaissance is nothing but a grotesque distraction. It's like waking up on a Monday to discover it's not just a calm day, but 24 hours of everyone else's existential crisis being projected onto you. Meanwhile, newly minted good citizens eagerly toss their stolen artworks onto the fires. Talk about major peer pressure. You might be looking at the crowd and thinking, gosh, the last thing I want is to end up on a list of people banned from the art scene. Seeing a once loyal party-goer twitch nervously while clenching their latest painting like it's a disgraced certificate of attendance is just downright awkward. Hey folks, these flames are hot enough without removing all semblance of self-expression. You might find yourself mumbling under your breath. And just when you think it can't get any more absurd, a man dons a cloak made from the ashes of scorched poetry, claiming that he's the embodiment of purified artistic intent. Bravo! He's just a sneeze away from becoming the most dramatic art critic of the year, ready to ferociously disassemble every aesthetic he once praised like rogue confetti. In this sea of fire and fury, you would grab a seat at a makeshift cafe, meaning you'd try to somehow find a quiet spot amid the cacophony that's more chaotic than trying to keep your dog from rolling in that mysterious thing in the park. And between you and me, want to talk social media nightmares? You'd rather face comments on your hashtag #NoFilter selfies than deal with an artist suddenly recalling their extra lifestyle from last week's soiree, leading to an existential crisis right on the cobblestone bonfire stage. Picture it. The jostling, the laughter, the perfume-laden fabric hanging in the air like a confused moth, all buzzing around like an inattentive bee at a flower convention. With each flame that flickers, your hopes for a hot pasta dish and some lovely casual conversation diminish. After all, when life gives you lemons, well, you don't just roast them, right? As you lay back, cozied into your makeshift nest, ponder this. While Florence dances perilously close to moral mayhem, it's all decidedly wiser than letting the flames inside your own heart burn. After all, that was practically the Renaissance mantra. Less is more. But let's not get carried away with enthusiasm, right? So as the embers of our dubious morality fizzle out in the cool night air, remember, in the grand tapestry of history, it was, after all, mildly interesting, until suddenly it wasn't, and you found yourself standing in the middle of an art-free dance floor, contemplating just how exactly you wound up here. What a wild ride. Chapter 19. A lapdog in Caligula's palace. Life under a reign of bizarre luxury. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a truly bizarre chapter of history, exploring the opulent and utterly absurd life of the Roman elite under Emperor Caligula. Imagine a world where the ruler's idea of a typical Tuesday involves a chariot ride through a sea of grape-stomping peasant protests and wildly inappropriate parties, a Roman version of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but with more togas and fewer self-help seminars. So grab your fanciest robe, douse yourself in olive oil, and get comfortable. Unless, of course, you're trying to figure out if you've still got a toga in your closet. Thank God for modern laundry systems, right? As you settle in, consider this. What would it be like to serve in Caligula's palace? Ever wondered how often you'd have to dodge a wobbly throne or a flying grape? Or maybe you're curious about what the gossip was like. Was it more scandalous than your family group chat when someone posts that one photo from the Christmas party? You think preparing for family dinner is tough? Wait until you hear about culinary delights being served in the emperor's dining room, where the food was less about flavor and more about trying not to choke on the absurdity of it all. Congratulations! You've just woken up in Caligula's palace, where the marble walls reverberate with laughter that sounds more like a clash of metal than sweet melodies. In the corner, a lady's lapdog, mischievous and spoiled like a sitcom character, rests on a silken cushion, draped in ribbons and adorned with tiny bells that jingle like a toddler on a sugar high. This adorable creature embodies the refinement that only a Roman matron could love. Meanwhile, this spectacle is almost wildly out of sync with the constant turmoil of a palace designed for democracy at its most dysfunctional. Let's talk about the daily grind in such an opulent but volatile environment. Imagine the faint scent of roast peacock wafting through the tapestry-draped air, lovingly interrupted by the eye-watering aroma of poorly prepared garum sauce. Sort of like an ancient Roman take on ketchup, but with double the fishy zest and way less appeal. You sidle over to catch a glimpse of the infamous lapdog. Oh yes, it has clearly acquired a taste for the good life. Is that the sound of tiny paws scurrying to your feet? It is. This little spaniel, possibly more pampered than its human owners, bats its soulful eyes as if to say, yes, I would like to try the emperor's finest leftovers. You got any caviar? It seems absurd, doesn't it? You're reminded of your own childhood pet, who somehow got the idea that every midnight snack was meant for them. But here in Caligula's palace, it's not just a snack. It's a gourmet feast prepared for the royal dog, as attention is lavished on every wagging tail. As the palace bustles with servants darting to obey commands that change by the minute, mostly because Caligula can't quite decide what's more entertaining, dwelling in debauchery or plotting elaborate pranks, this little beast appears to be the true monarch. It's not the emperor's toga I'm worried about, you think. It's that lapdog learning how to sign autographs. Just then a servant, clearly exasperated, empties a sizable bowl of leftovers right in front of the pooch, and the lapdog dives headfirst into a once elegant dish, its little nose splattered with rich sauces and pastes. An ancient take on the modern working's breakfast, as they attempt to sneak in just one more slice of pizza before heading to the office. But here, office translates to dodging ceremonial spectacles and toothy gladiator games. Hot tip: no one ever left work on time because of an awkward encounter with a lion. What strikes you as particularly absurd is that amidst the chaos of lavish feasts and meticulously manicured gardens overflowing with waterfowl, Caligula's leadership was marked by a sense of surrealism, a bit like a group project gone wrong in high school, with everyone demanding to be the boss, but none wanting to do the actual work. When you hear of an emperor proclaiming himself a living god, you might be nodding in bewilderment, thinking, isn't it harder to just be human? And yet, those couriers of gossip, the laughing sycophants and scheming senators who've graced the palace with their presence, scramble in their small sardines, forever trying to outshine each other by taking extra attention away from what really matters. That fluff ball of a lapdog, now proudly wearing a fork on a collar like it's the latest trend. Meanwhile, the pet owner might be eyeing it with a strange blend of pride and dread, wishing they had a little less gold and a tad more sanity to make an escape out the back door. But escaping, you realize, is hardly an option, especially when the palace's ambiance is more akin to a raucous Roman carnival than a place of governance. Much like navigating a family reunion where Uncle Bob does karaoke after that last wine bottle is uncorked. There's no tranquility in these walls, only velvet chaos, strewn about with a generous helping of misplaced expectations. So, as this lapdog indulges in life's guilty pleasures under a reign of absurdity, it becomes clear, in Caligula's world of grandeur and madness, it's not just about the lavish spreads or the thrilling entertainment. It's about weathering the wild storm that is Rome, with a tiny bell jingling softly against your heart. Can you believe it? Life under Caligula was one part political circus, one part canine extravaganza, and a whole lot of theatrics, all served on a golden platter with a side of crazy. So buckle up, because that was just a taste of the delightful weirdness history has to offer. And just when you think it can't get any more absurd, you take a quick glance at the lapdog again and ask yourself, when did I become a lowly servant in a silent rebellion against the furry overlord? Welcome to history, where every epoch has its quirks, and tonight is no exception. Chapter 20: Canine Privilege in the Palace of Caligula, Roman Parenting with Paws and Claws. Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey through a palace so anarchic it makes modern reality TV look like a school meditation class. Welcome to the court of Caligula, where the marble walls reverberate with laughter, confusion, and, well, a smattering of chaos. Ever wondered what it would be like to serve in a household where the decor is more prone to pranks than a summer camp? You may as well relocate your sense of sanity, because we're diving deep into the loyal lives of those who navigated this surreal circus of history, and, of course, their pampered pets. Before we get comfortable, how about a little thought experiment? If you were tasked with serving a man who once considered his horse a viable senator, would you bring snacks or a strong drink? Do you think lapdogs were more popular than actual children in households across Rome? And let's be honest, would you rather chase a flying grape or dodge an emperor with a questionable sense of humor armed with a tiny banana? Make sure your toga is adjusted. You're going to need all the comfort you can get. Congratulations. You've just woken up in Caligula's palace. But you're not the main character, not even close. Instead, your life revolves around a regal greyhound, sleek and shiny as if it buffed itself with a gloss of egotism. You shuffle along while the nobleman's hound radiates the essence of aristocracy, diamond-studded collar and all, like the canine equivalent of an Instagram influencer flexing at brunch. So here you are, in the glass palace of madness, where the air is thick with the scent of roasted peacock and, oh, is that a whiff of rancid garum? Nothing encapsulates the culinary prowess of Rome quite like fish sauce that resembles unholy concoctions made by an irritable chef at the end of his shift. The kitchen's reaction to such unique odors would have been likened to a modern-day cooking disaster gone wildly viral. Here's a cricket that's formerly a gourmet meal, your nervous stomach declares in silent protest. And as you make your way through the grand rooms filled with loungers, you can't help but notice the greyhound once more. Strutting about as if it owns the place, this four-legged aristocrat's collar of silver and enamel glimmers, showcasing that loyalty, courage, and sheer indulgence are very much the hallmarks of canine life here. You contemplate how this hound's career path of rolling in filth to nudging someone's leftovers would rival your own struggles with that mediocre middle management job you're stuck in. Really, what do we have to complain about, huh? Just then, the nobleman, undoubtedly on the quest for sweeter grapes, barks an order to one of the nearby servants, who has just haplessly dropped a silver platter of leftover grapes, garnering a round of applause from the others. Because nothing quite says orderly empire like a circus act involving cavalier canines and gravity-defying fruit bowls. Who needs a theatrical display when you can witness a surprisingly nimble nobleman's hound dive into the chaos like it's auditioning for America's Next Top Dog model? You watch as this four-legged deity indulges, nuzzling into luxurious leftovers, while you ponder the baffling reality of an age where the line between human and pet was as thin as a threadbare toga. If only someone could adopt that level of privilege while maneuvering through the trials of data entry jobs and staff meetings. In a single swift motion, the greyhound has commandeered a sizable chunk of leftover peacock, and here you are, standing by like a loyal assistant to a reigning canine overlord. Wishful thinking sinking into your brain like an enticing Pinot Noir after a rocky work week. Did you ever think you'd find yourself taking lessons from a dog on how to navigate hierarchy? Think about it. Dog parks as diplomatic summits, and the act of rolling over as an audacious power play in front of a bunch of fluffy contenders. You ponder the lamentable notion that while this palace dog luxuriates amidst heaps of indulgent feasts and hysteria, your modern-day counterpart might be struggling with a decision between catnip or meow mix for a less-than-regal house pet. Both lifestyles, you realize, revolve around one thing: the pursuit of comfort, whether it's in a lavish palace or a slightly dingy living room sprinkled with pet fur. But there lies the rub. Being a servant to such a pampered beast means that you find yourself entangled in a web of demands that seem entirely disproportionate, like making house calls to a diva with a sparkling collar who only wants to nap in sunbeams. And ironically, as you fetch snacks to satiate a furball with more privileges than most emperors, you can't help but shiver at the thought of facing another awkward dinner party, where the mix of odor and dignity hangs in the air like the lingering notes of a particularly bad aria. All of this absurdity swirling around you gets to a point where the palace's chaos becomes an unexpected comfort. After all, who sees the true grandeur behind the farcical drama of doggy dinners filled with cancelled noble engagements? And just when you think you've peaked, the greyhound eyes you with that unmistakable look, disdain mixed with a hint of hilarious judgment, a solid reminder that no matter the century, no one really fills in for the royal whimper. So as you navigate this bizarre court of Caligula, filled with laughter that dances precariously around the uncertain sounds of wood on marble, remember this: sometimes history is best appreciated not through grand battles or political machinations, but through the absurd exploits of those who served. The people whose lives were shaped by the whims of the unreasonable, who, in this case, looks distinctly canine. Life, it seems, has always had its quirks, and that furry companion is just one of many delightful oddities shaping the course of history. Chapter 21. Exotic Menagerie at Caligula's Court, when a pet monkey is your only hope for sanity. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a palace so extravagant it makes your cousin's wedding reception look like a potluck at a retirement home. Welcome to Caligula's Court, where the aroma of roasted peacock mingles with the sound of hilariously misplaced aristocratic ambitions. Picture this. You've just ventured into a world where the real celebrities are not the gladiators or philosophers, but rather, well, oddly prominent pets. Because what better way to maintain power than have a monkey wearing a jeweled harness? Before we cozy up in our mental time machine, let's ponder a few delightful questions that might render you chuckling into the void tonight. Ever wondered what it's like to negotiate with a monkey over a piece of banana? Or thought about how a parrot's tax bracket suddenly seems higher than yours, simply because it can mimic that horror movie line, "I see dead people," in 5 different languages? And please, think about how utterly mad it is that in ancient Rome you could be a servant, and your most significant career achievement would be the ability to soothe a ruffled parrot. So dim those lights, crank up the fan for maximum chill, and get comfortable. Because congratulations, you've just woken up in Caligula's palace, where the only thing crazier than the emperor's hairstyle is the petting zoo unfolding right under your nose. Welcome to the exquisite confines of good old Gaius's palace, where the walls are adorned with stories of conquests, and the fauna provides comic relief in real time. Let's talk about the parrot first. This feathered diva resides in a heated chamber, aglow with more lights than a Roman Christmas. You can practically feel its ego swell as it entertains guests with a repertoire of mimicked speeches. Ack. Who needs Shakespearean actors when you can just have Mr. Squawk and Roll there, polishing his status by repeating the same phrases that got Caligula's best buddy booted from the party all over again? Picture him. Et tu, Brute? And I'll have what he's having. Until finally, someone throws a grape and the bird flies off in utter contempt for humanity, leading to a fit of giggles among the squabbling nobles. Unsurprisingly, this act is part of the evening entertainment, because who needs live bardic recitals when you can see a pampered parrot one-up the entire Senate? And speaking of their glamorous entourage, enter the monkey, a little creature clad in a bedazzled harness that would make any fashion guru weep with envy. Imagine the sight. This monkey is flitting around, snatching grapes from dishes and tossing them with unrivaled audacity. You'd think this is where Instagram influencers get their start, strutting around on marble floors, shaking their tiny fists at the palace staff, causing a scandal that would echo throughout history. The epicenter of attention, this monkey perfects the art of social media antics by merely maintaining a mild semblance of personal style. A small feat compared to the typical daily grind of cranky senators casually plotting over the last crust of bread. Navigating this whimsical circus, you try to make sense of your servitude, wishing you had gotten the memo that serving Caligula meant daily encounters with creatures fabulously trained in social manipulation. Ever tried serving a meal to a monkey that looks like it belongs on a catwalk? The trick is not to make eye contact, while silently cursing the gods for not granting you tiny fur-covered hands to whisk food away before it gets the hostess's snacks thrown at it in an exaggerated spat of noble outrage. Let's take a moment to sit back and appreciate the fine architecture of this palace, which, oddly enough, mirrors the temperaments of its inhabitants. Gold filigree adorning the pillars shimmers like your bank statement after payday. Short-lived and extravagant. But the reality is, while trying to impress honored guests, the echo of monkey screams just amplifies the inherent chaos looming beneath the surface. Smells waft through the air, a perplexing blend of exotic spices attempting to cover the fact that, sure, you've also got a rebellious pet crisis unfolding in the corner. Remember, it's all about brand management, doing your best not to let ancient Rome's most ridiculous pet frenzy overshadow Republican maneuvering. And there you are, standing awkwardly against fine silk drapery that probably cost more than your month's rent, wondering exactly where your life took a turn toward this ridiculousness. You, holding a platter, while a parrot holds the moral high ground, is a uniquely Roman experience indeed. Between dodging flying grapes and disarming staccato conversations about sea serpents' rights, you realize you've outdone yourself in this odd hierarchy of privilege, serving some of the most memorable egomaniacs in history. The sheer absurdity of it all could put you firmly in an existential crisis, or perhaps just a perpetual state of amused disbelief. So as you navigate the chaos of Caligula's court, just remember, in the realm of history, sometimes the real gems of knowledge emerge not from monstrous battles, but from the most whimsical tales of servitude amidst exotic menageries, where a monkey in a harness might just become your attendance buddy at the next emperor's garden soiree. If history has taught us anything, it's that being a servant in Caligula's court could lead to unexpected moments of humor. A daily dose of insanity that makes your Monday morning coffee feel like a soothing herbal tea amidst a storm. Forget empires falling. Your biggest concern was whether you could outsmart a monkey capable of playing the flamboyant court jester better than you could manage your own sanity.
Chapter 22. Falconry Follies. Why servitude in Caligula's palace sucked. Hey guys, tonight we're trading in the chaos of Caligula's court for something that once soared higher than your hopes on a Monday morning. Falconry. But not just any falconry. We're talking about magnificent gerfalcons trotting around Caligula's palace like they've skipped out of an Arctic vacation brochure. Yep, those regal birds were not just pets. They were status symbols, the Lexuses of the avian world. At least until they decided to drop a deuce on the emperor's favorite toga. But before we embark on this majestic journey that promises humor and a healthy portion of absurdity, let's ponder some questions that'll tickle your mind and calm your heart. Ever wondered what it feels like to have a bird of prey hiding your morning coffee just because it feels like being adorably petty? Or how many servants had to especially wake up early just to give a falcon a pep talk before it launched into the stratosphere? Spoiler, it likely involved lots of cooing and 3 parts birdseed, 1 part hope. So dim the lights, maybe grab a cozy blanket, and for goodness sake, don't include any food items unless you're willing to share with a bemused bird in a gold-trimmed hood. Congratulations. You've just woken up in the lavish chaos that is Caligula's palace, surrounded by the most pampered group of aristocratic falcons this side of the Tiber River. Yes, servitude in the emperor's court was one chaotic soap opera of gilded feathers and misplaced dignity. Let's talk about the falcon itself. A gerfalcon, no less. Imported from the frigid Arctic like a high-maintenance celebrity stumbling into a tropical resort. Imagine it, perched regally on a noble's arm, the sun glinting off its feathers, while you, yes, you, stand there holding a plate of grapes and praying that the bird doesn't take a liking to your hair. The resemblance to trendy haircuts in contemporary salons is uncanny, and surely much feared, especially since this bird had a penchant for selecting the most extravagant targets for its poop. Every time that falcon opened its beak, you'd half expect a Shakespearean soliloquy about the weight of aristocratic responsibility. But instead, it was just a squawk that reverberated through the marble halls like a soap opera star revealing the biggest family secret. Your job? To stand proudly by, holding a platter of exquisitely prepared snacks, while imagining a wild life where you were not serving snacks, but snacking like a king. Ah, sweet dreams. And speaking of snacks, the daily duties of serving at Caligula's court involved some curious culinary contortions. While noble guests chowed down on delicacies including roasted peacock, orange-infused silkworms, and everything else that should never be considered edible, you wondered what calamity led you to fit into this absurdity. What is my life, you might ask, while still side-eyeing the falcon for any impending attacks on your dignity. One perceptive glance at a rogue grape in your palm sent you into a panic. You were the unfortunate prey in this ironic hunting game of servitude.
Now, imagine trying to fetch the best wines from the cellar, while your percher on this fine marble column preened its glorious feathers, like a diva basking in the limelight. "Servus," nobility would call. "Get my wine." Meanwhile, you're left wondering how you might evade a talon ensconced in the lustrous embroidery of your garment, if this bird decided to assert its superiority. You can't just slap it seriously, can you? After all, a significant amount of your income goes directly toward bird-proofing your toga. Ah, the soundscape of this life. The pleasant coos mingled with the rustle of silks created a backdrop akin to an orchestral performance, punctuated sometimes by the flurry of feathers and a particularly boisterous crud as someone dove out of the way of an aerial assault. Because when you're a servant in Caligula's court, dodging flying messes is part of the job description, right alongside mastering the art of the polite smile and discreetly hiding the slightest irritation toward a bird that could fly higher than your self-esteem. Then came the thrill of falconry rituals. These birds were trained not just to fly, but to demonstrate their superiority. And while the nobles marveled, you were left in the audience, waiting patiently with a questionable assortment of droppings on your sleeve as they incorrectly praised your dear feathered friend. Guilt tripped over your dignity every time a noble declared, "What elegance! What grace!" while you shrieked internally about your latest laundry bill. At the end of this feather-induced frenzy, you stood there, apron clutched tight, wondering how on earth these majestic creatures were worth serving, especially if their high-maintenance lifestyle meant you had to wipe their talons off your favorite ceremonial plates. Such was fate. As one of Caligula's servants, winding your way through the throne room littered with feathers, customizing your box of loves and hates for birds. But always remember, in the hallowed halls of history, sometimes the real stories emerged not from the emperors of yore, but from the poor souls like you, left to manage the mischief of birds dressed to impress. So, there you are, part-time feather wrangler in Caligula's court, asking the significant questions of your life. Why do I serve? Is it for glory, or just for the tales of a rebellious falcon? The answer? Sometimes in the grand theatre of history, the absurdity does indeed make the most lasting impression. In the end, whether with the grace of a nobleman, or the ferocity of a falcon flaring its wings, the greatest tales are the ones that remind you that you can't make this stuff up, even if you're swimming in feathers.
Chapter 23.
Chariots of Fire and Other Nightmares. Welcome to Caligula's Servitude. Hey guys, tonight we're hitching our dreams to a rather fiery chariot, one that carries us through the chaotic landscape of Servitude in Caligula's palace, a place where daily life could make a soap opera look like a peaceful afternoon tea. Picture it. You're surrounded by an emperor who thought he was a god, flanked by equally baffling nobility whose hairstyles were more outrageous than a cat in a tiara. If you think your boss is demanding, just wait until you hear about trying to please an emperor who decided that public indecency was just a fun way to spice things up on a Tuesday. But before we gallop too far into this historical rodeo, let's take a moment to ponder some life-altering questions. Have you ever wondered what it might be like to serve a ruler with the emotional stability of a feral kitten? How many toga-clad VIPs did it take to ruin a perfectly fine banquet with just one ill-timed sneeze? And, most importantly, could you make it through the day without being asked to provide lunch and perform a dramatic retelling of Julius Caesar's life in interpretive dance? So, dim the lights, position your favorite snack mysteriously out of reach, and allow yourself to be whisked away to a time when working from home merely meant suffering less in public. Congratulations! You've just woken up in the glorious world of ancient Rome, circa 37 AD, where serving in Caligula's palace was about as pleasant as being the designated driver after a fraternity party. Let's talk about your new job for a moment. Imagine, your first day, you arrive at the palace, and as soon as you step inside, the overwhelming scent of incense mingles with the aroma of something suspiciously unidentifiable. Maybe that's a Senate debate down the hall, or possibly just leftovers from last week's recommended feast of stuffed dormice. Either way, your nose is tingling with excitement, or shock, really. Now, the palace is magnificent, bigger than your average neighborhood supermarket, and filled with nooks and crannies where no one would dare search for lost socks. It's no wonder that navigating it feels like being a contestant on a reality show, where your job is to dodge emperors and run errands, all while not being beheaded for stepping on the wrong tile. "Hey, you!" an aristocrat calls out, remorseless as a cat eyeing its prey. "Fetch me my favorite salted fish, the one that's been marinating under the sun, but like super sun-kissed." You realize that your job description is about to include confusing culinary jargon that you'd need a Rosetta Stone to decipher. Remember that day you faced problems like getting toothpaste on your shirt? Now add in the stress of delivering fish that would likely cause an entire household to enter a dramatic starvation mode. Take a moment to breathe. Inhale strength like you're about to swim through a sea of marinated confusion. And let's not forget the highly anticipated entertainment of the evening, a gladiatorial battle. You're tasked with setting the scene, while desperately hoping that none of your colleagues grab the wrong sword and turn the duel into an avant-garde interpretive dance. The last thing you need is a gladiator's confusion turning into artistic expression, which, spoiler alert, will end with someone's head rolling toward your lunch. Now, as you prepare to deliver the evening's main course to the emperor himself, who, by the way, is currently busy debating the merits of bathing in aspic, you can feel the fluttering of nerves. It's the kind of anxiety that promotes daydreams about becoming a humble farmer instead. At least on a farm, you'd only have to dodge cow hooves, far less dramatic than the tossing of lavish jugs of wine that can turn a banquet into a waspy pyrotechnic performance. As you shuffle through the crowd, sipping your own cup of unfortunately sour wine, enlightening conversations echo around you. "Oh, darling, did you hear? Caligula has decided to adopt his own horse as a senator. Isn't that simply delightful?" You smirk internally. Delightful? If that's how you describe a horse negotiating taxes, then we've hit a new level of absurdity no one ever signed up for. You finally arrive at the emperor's table, balancing the salted fish while dodging flying grapes and unintended hiccups of absurdity. And just when you think it couldn't get weirder, the emperor shouts, Bring forth my favorite laurel-wreathed dancer. You mumble a prayer like, please, let me be the one to finish my shift without being sacrificed to the whims of a madman who knows what he's had for breakfast. And oh, the noise! Guests erupt into laughter, arguing over the reality of whose hair is more extravagant. Did you know ancient Rome had a serious competition for hair volume? It's like watching a scene from America's Next Top Model, but with slightly more drapery and far less legal insurance. As the night rolls on, the duties of serving become less about sustenance and more about doing cartwheels to amuse an audience that clearly forgot the meaning of moderation. You wonder when the ancient Romans decided that their soirees were meant for entertainment over food. It's like someone suggesting an all-audio dinner, lovely for the ears, not so much for the tummy. At the end of this ridiculous, chaotic, and wholly absurd evening, you find solace in a tiny corner of the banquet hall, pondering life's most pressing question. Can I switch jobs with the horse next door? At least he gets to eat in peace. And as you settle down for the night in your modest quarters, if you can call sharing space with a few startled pigeons a peaceful night, reflect on how in the grand play of history, the true humor comes not just from emperors seeking drama, but from the laughably absurd lives of those who had to put up with it all. Because in Caligula's court, where all you could do was serve chaos on a silver platter, sometimes the craziest stories aren't from the rulers, but from the weary souls just trying to keep a grip on sanity amongst the feathers and furor. What a time to be alive, or trying to be at least. Chapter 24. Hoofbeats, blood, and a side of regret. Welcome to Poitiers. Hey guys, tonight we're charging into something that comes less from a majestic equestrian performance and more from a clumsy encounter between a horse and a particularly shredding mud pit. Yes, we're galloping through the dramatic battlefield of Poitiers, where the stakes are higher than a cat stuck in a tree, and the bravery of the destrier, the horse, far outshines the humans trying to hang on for dear life. Before we dive into the squishy details of this muddy affair, let's take a moment to reflect. Have you ever ridden a horse that seemed more interested in munching grass than charging into battle? Ever tried to keep your lunch from turning into your last meal during a particularly enthusiastic gallop? Or perhaps your family dinner resembled a battlefield more than a calm meal. If you answered yes to any of these, congratulations. You instinctively understand the chaos we're about to explore. So, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan to create a fresh wind through your window, because you'll need to cool off after we wade through the gruesome goo of history and settle back. Congratulations. You've just woken up amidst the chaos of the year 1356, where mud is your fiercest foe, and war has infinitely more drama than your average episode of a family sitcom. Now let's talk about the clash that marked Poitiers. Imagine, if you will, the mighty destrier galloping forth, carrying both a human and heroic dreams on its back. Its iron-shod hooves pounding against the churned mud, the very earth swallowing hopes and ambitions, as soldiers slipped and slid, looking like they were auditioning for a medieval version of Dancing with the Stars. The smell of sweat and fear mingles in the air, a potent recipe for pure chaos. As the trumpets blare and battle cries pierce the thick mood, that wonderful scent of iron, aka blood, lingers like an unwanted guest you can't convince to leave early. You can almost hear that absurd whisper in your ear saying, "Hey, remember when you thought fighting a battle would be gloriously heroic? Surprise! Turns out it's just a mud bath with swords." As the destrier charges into the enemy line, you might be wishing you'd put on something more practical than that threadbare tunic. The mud now clings like an overzealous toddler. You feel every squelch, every step, as if the earth is saying, "Nope, not gonna let you leave that easily." Amidst the clamor, there's Prince John. Yes, the Prince John, who fancies himself a brave knight, but handles a sword like a toddler with a stick. His grand battle strategy appears to be more about looking fierce for Instagram. Oops, sorry, wrong timeline, as his sword transforms into an executioner's blade. Powered not by technique but mere panic. And can you imagine shrieking "charge" like a battle cry while slipping every which way as your boots become
Two personalities, one hoping to stay clean, and the other diving headfirst into that delightful quagmire. And oh, let's take a moment to consider the sound. The gurgles of fear echo through the battlefield, mingling with the splats of mud being flung like some twisted form of artillery. If you've ever experienced the joy of stepping into a puddle, well, you're only slightly prepared for the simultaneous thrill and horror of wading through a battlefield, dodging bloodstains like a choreography project gone awry. You glance nervously at the enemy forces, basking in their own chaos, because fear spreads faster than wild gossip in a village. Their banners billow like they're auditioning for a medieval fashion show, while soldiers stumble about, trying not to look like they're auditioning for a slapstick comedy. Imagine shouting for honor, and then immediately regretting it when mud splashes at eye level. How's that for your dignity, eh? As the horses thunder across the battlefield, you might find yourself making absurd comparisons to daily life, like that time you attempted to navigate the grocery store during a sale. All those rushing bodies, chaotic elements, and you, holding your ground with a cart that may as well have been a chariot. Were the stakes similarly high? Debatable, but nothing quite compares to feeling like your grocery list might end up being the last scroll of a great historian, documenting your unfortunate demise in a cereal aisle. And there, with shouts and clangs echoing around you, one very unfortunate man loses his footing, landing with a decidedly ungainly splat. It's betrayal by the mud, and you can't help but chuckle a little. Same, buddy. Same. The battle rages on, and while the heroic myths you'd imagine flood your mind, rest assured, the reality bears more resemblance to a comedy show featuring slapstick tragedy than an epic tale of valor. You realize these moments have their value, transforming what should have been glorious moments into laughable spectacles. As day turns to dusk and the chaos subsides, your heart might race as you recount the absurdity of it all. You find solace in the realization that even amidst frantic hooves and confused shouts, the muddied chaos serves as a reminder, whether on a battlefield or in a grocery store line,
that life has a funny way of turning heroic efforts into mirthful memories. Because in the end, whether you're galloping through a battlefield or just trying to make it through the week without another awkward oops, we're all on a slippery slope, trying not to slip into the absurd with the grace of a prince on a war horse. And if nothing else, perhaps tonight we've collectively learned to find humor in the most unexpected of places, like a muddy battlefield in Poitiers, or that comically inappropriate family dinner, if only to keep our spirits high amidst the chaos. How's that for a historical joyride? Chapter 25. The Black Horse of Caligula's Very Serious Circus. Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the majestic world of ancient Rome, a time where togas were like today's gym selfies, and social status was determined by how many grapes you could balance on your head while reciting poetry. But hold on to your laurel wreaths, because we're not just here for the glamour. We'll be exploring a side that's about as appealing as being the jester at Caligula's dinner party, where servitude was more about dodging flying, rotting fruit than sipping fine wine. Before we gallop forward into this absurd chapter of history, let's take a moment to reflect on the absurdity of it all. Have you ever felt like your boss is more demanding than the average Roman emperor? Do you know what it's like to smile through the pain while serving someone who's more dramatic than your local soap opera? Or maybe you've been in a social situation where you longed to escape, like a fly at a picnic, only no one's swatting you away. If you've said yes to any of these, congratulations. You're already well prepared for the chaos of those who dared to serve in Caligula's legendary, albeit mildly horrifying, court. So, dim the lights. Maybe put a few sun-drenched olives in your cup of wine. Totally authentic, right? And get cozy under your favorite blanket, because tonight we'll trot into the year 37 AD, where servitude looks less like a noble calling and more like signing up for a never-ending game of dodgeball with the Roman elite. Imagine waking up one day as a servant in Caligula's palace, where the view is breathtaking, the food is questionable, and your boss has the attention span of a goldfish with a flair for the dramatic. Let's set the scene. It's a bustling morning, and the smell of oppressed slaves mingles with the aromatic stench of yesterday's leftovers. You can practically taste the anxiety in the air. It's like a cooking show gone horribly wrong. Now, picture the courtyard, filled with a few hundred servants who have mastered the art of invisibility. Ever tried to sneak around while carrying a tray stacked higher than your hopes of ever being promoted? That's you, deftly maneuvering like a ballet dancer in a pool filled with 5 kinds of liquid, with a side of impending doom caused by the emperor's mood swings. Will he be delighted with today's offerings, or will it earn you a starring role in the next round of Caligula's Got Talent, where the talent involved mostly avoiding execution? As you scurry through the palace, you overhear gossip flapping around louder than a chicken being chased by a toddler. Did you hear Caligula wants a horse to be a consulate? Someone whispers. And you wonder, is that really crazier than my last team-building exercise? Because let's be honest, both scenarios have one thing in common: a lot of people who would rather not be there. The hierarchy within.
Caligula's court could make your head spin faster than a Roman chariot race. As a servant, your daily to-do list includes meticulously fanning the emperor's sweaty brow, arranging lavish banquets that could make your local catering business weep, and pretending you didn't just hear that conversation about him wanting to declare war on the ocean. Yep, that's right. a full-scale war on the sea. Talk about misplaced priorities. Ever considered battling your washing machine for supremacy in an entirely different arena? I can't see the similarities, can you? But let's focus on one particularly notable scheme: Caligula's infamous training of his favorite horse, Incitatus. In between extravagant feasts and questionable decisions, Caligula dedicated serious time to ensuring that this horse had the finest oat wine, a marble stable, and maybe a cushy throne to sit upon. It's like a true luxury horse spa day, every hour on the hour. Meanwhile, you're over here making do with stale bread and a few olives, having aspirations of someday being a philosopher/clown. Does it feel equitable? Of course not. A gentle reminder: trying dictating loyalty during this time tends to veer off the rails like an out-of-control pig at a barbecue. You're practically begging the gods for a sign that you'll survive the day when suddenly you remember, oh right, it could be worse. I could be that horse. At mealtimes, the scent of roasted meats wafts through the air, an intoxicating melange of flavors that make your stomach growl louder than a lion at feeding time. Yet you're stuck at the children's table, dodging grape skins thrown by Caligula's cousins, like an ill-prepared player in an ancient version of dodgeball. Imagine your boss droning on while you secretly wish for an escape route through the nearest window. But no, you must remain seated amidst the philosophical musings of the room, the conflation of actual philosophical discussions and ludicrous theories about why the ocean is not a sentient being. Sure, what's brunch without a bit of horseplay? As the palace revelries carry on into the night, laughter echoes, the kind of laughter that sounds more like frantic hallucinations after a week of questionable cuisine. You can't help but roll your eyes. If only these people could see how ridiculous this all looks, you think, while secretly plotting your grand escape to a cozy little cottage far away from this madness. So here you are, an overlooked cog in a very wobbly Roman machine, where Servitude juxtaposes the grandeur of Caligula's bizarre whims. But tonight, as you drift off amidst the sounds of an emperor plotting against the breeze, remember this: sometimes life challenges you to find humor in the chaos and embrace it with a laugh, even if your life feels like a never-ending parade of horse-related nonsense. And there you have it, the bewildering life of a servant in Caligula's palace. A day filled with
Elaborate meals, wild tales, and more absurdity than any stand-up act you've ever witnessed on Netflix. Here's hoping for a sleep without late-night horse musings, and maybe, just maybe, a more peaceful tomorrow. So as we pull ourselves out of the Roman Empire and the Renaissance and gallop away from the medieval battlefield, take a moment to absorb everything your ancestors had to put up with. We've seen what it was like to survive a chaotic god-emperor who viewed your life as a Tuesday night's improv session, where one yawn could lead to a sudden, highly choreographed execution. We've watched the Medici turn passion and betrayal into an investment strategy, where a love affair was just a politically motivated merger and acquisition. And we've learned that a knight's warhorse was less an animal and more a four-legged, armored manifestation of his honor, expected to fight and die for him without question. It's ridiculous, isn't it? The sheer, stubborn, sometimes hilarious resilience of people who navigated this life without central heating, without ibuprofen, and certainly without the luxury of being completely invisible when a certified lunatic with divine power got bored. They were simply trying to get through the day, avoid bad digestion,
and not look too happy or too sad or too relaxed in front of the wrong person. Tonight, as you tuck yourself into a bed with clean sheets that, by the way, are probably softer than the linens Caligula offered his terrified attendants, and you realize your biggest decision is whether to hit the snooze button or make coffee, feel a little gratitude. Be grateful you don't have to practice smiling in a mirror to fool a sociopath. Be grateful your dog is a companion, not a symbol of your wealth. And be profoundly grateful that your life's safety doesn't depend on a horse's ability to remain calm while arrows darken the sky. History may be gross and terrifying, but it's also proof that people are stubborn, hopeful, and kind of ridiculously adaptable. Now, let the absurdity of the past fade away. Your sheets are clean. Your water is hot. And for the next few hours, no one is watching. Sleep well, listeners. You've survived history tonight.